Hi, everybody, and welcome. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. Technically, we're doing level 2, lesson 6, and it's all about the sun, interdimensional ethics, and the behaviors of DNA. But first, I want to give you a little bit of an energetic and physical weather report of what's going on because I live in Southern California and I'm not far from the city of Los Angeles, maybe 2 hours away by car, but they're having very, very intense fires down there that are really disrupting our whole entire area. And it's been fueled by these very, very intense winds that have been coming through, really hurricane force winds. So that came through our area where I live. I am north and west of Los Angeles. And I did not sleep very much last night, not only because it literally sounded like a battlefield. Y'all have to mute yourselves. I definitely do not have the patience and ability to do that today. Sounded like a battlefield outside, very, very intense and uncomfortable. And also, I'm telepathic and I'm empathic and I'm feeling everything that's going on. And it was very, very intense battle in terms of esoteric or spiritual or energy warfare as well. So I really stayed up a lot of the night last night, watching what was going on people sharing on their various social medias and doing flying rainbow lasagnas and doing different forms of energetic force fields of protection in order to try to protect my area. So that is why I would ask for your total love and compassion today because I am very sleep deprived. And then also this morning, I know I needed to go over my notes before class, but I went over to one of my neighbors because we have a lot of trees down in our neighborhood and some of the roads were blocked. But here where I live, like people are very good and they help one another in a crisis like this. So people have come by with chainsaws and they've cleared out the roads. But I went just a few blocks over to where I share a garden space in my neighbor's backyard, and her backyard looked terrible. Oh my goodness. And so I did some help cleaning up over there. Like she's got a giant tree down and just it looked like all of the foliage was on the ground too, just like everywhere over there. And our garden project was salvageable, not totally destroyed, but there's just like craziness. So spent the morning helping to clean up a garden of my community member. So all of these factors mean that I'm not as laser focused as I usually am in what I'm sharing and have definitely easily distracted and some minimal amounts of patience. So thank you for understanding that about me. And I will also rely heavily upon my notes as I'm giving class today, because I wasn't sure if we were even be able to have class today because the electrical company in my area sent out an emergency notice that said, we might just turn off your electricity just preventatively so that it does not spark more fires in the area, because we have the overhead power lines that come down in a storm and then everything is very dry and it makes it go on fire. But that is also, please know that that is the rationalism story of how these fires begin and how they become so prevalent. Many, many people have a deep intuition and a knowing behind the facade of outwardly presented reality that there are other factors that are contributing to these surprising fires that happen in certain places at certain times and have very, very strange qualities, making my SpongeBob face, like we have no idea about this. I also wrote some new words as I'm going into my SpongeBob face. I wrote some new words on my pad of bad things over here because I realize I'm going to need to be able to talk a lot about current events and relate my teachings from 10 years ago to what we're presently experiencing. And there's a lot of things I'm not allowed to say. So I will be pointing and gesturing, miming, and occasionally using interpretive dance in order to be able to get these informations across to you. And like one of the things, let's just go over our vocabulary today. I wrote some new words on here. So I hope you can read this on your screen. That I sometimes use as a gesture like this to be able to talk about. We'll be calling those cupcakes, and these proposed items at the bottom of my list here, that's new, that I don't usually talk about, we will be calling that cupcake sprinkles, okay? And then also, this is why I have to really walk on eggshells regarding the topic for today. I did receive a content strike several months ago that was about the concept of what is written at the top of this page that you have was considered misinformation in some way. So I cannot say that with my words, but I will say that with my interpretive dance. And this is a related concept to the upper concept, but I might face similar issues. So please know that this is a big part of what I'm teaching today. And that relates to cupcakes, even more than sprinkles might be sprinkling upon others around you. If you put a cupcake in your mouth and the sprinkles just jump everywhere. We got to laugh about this, guys. And also, you can tell I'm very sleep deprived. But also, it ain't just your sprinkles that are making things that happen in one person relate to, influence, or possibly happen in another person who's standing right next to them. So in our analogies, what we'll say is one person eats the cupcakes, but maybe the people around them also get the calories too. And because the topic of my lesson from over 10 years ago now is the sun, DNA, and interdimensional ethics. It's basically about the ecosystem of consciousness and the way that our consciousnesses are interconnected, the way that our minds interconnect, the way that this thing at the bottom is truthful, and the way that the dance of DNA can have an impact on other people's DNA and everything behind that. But you can see how I never had issues in previous semesters talking about these concepts because there was not a biological agenda occurring that made those concepts so threatening to the foundation of the validation of that agenda. I feel like I can't even say any words. I'm just saying, like, what's the nearest word that I can say to that? And the nearest word that I can say to that. I'm using my mental thesaurus. My brain is working so hard to be able to talk about these things. So let me mental sorbet. Drink some lemon water, everyone. Let me scroll through my notes because I want to get to a very particular. My notes have part 1 and part 2. I will send them out. Again, I wasn't sure if I would have class today because they were going to preemptively turn off the electricity. But we have the electricity, so I'm happy that we have that. So wait. This is what I wanted to emphasize. Verbatim from my notes. Humanity was originally created as a perfect connector between the corporeal world of flesh and the world of divine solar consciousness. And DNA so that's directly from the notes. And what I wanted to add to that is that DNA, I always talk about this in class and in personal sessions that I do to help people. DNA is a bridge of light. It is the most ephemeral aspect of your physical body that we can still agree is a physicality presence that can be experienced with the 5 senses and seen under a microscope. And so it's within the realm of physicality, but it is almost at the level of being pure light, meaning pure energy or pure information or pure intelligence. So you could also say truthfully that DNA is the molecular evidence of a realm of pure intelligence, an abstract realm, yes, patterned like the abstract paintings that I create. There is a world of potential that is the blueprint for the molecular realm of experience, and DNA is the biological bridge between these two realms. In conceiving of DNA in that way, you come to comprehend that your body is incredibly valuable real estate in the real world. Because where there's a realm of pure potential, if there's no interface for it to actually come into the realm of the 5 senses and physicality, it simply remains as potential. For something to actually become and experience or move through the world in experience time, it's got to come through this biological formfulness or the world of the 5 senses and be a part of the world. So although giving birth is usually conceived of in the mammalian sense of, a uterus and, like a flowing outward of a biological life form, giving birth is also being a conduit for those potentials and abstract ideas and ideals to come through you and then come into the world. And I'm speaking, of course, from my lesson from 10 years ago, from a very pristine direction where we all are good students, not sweat hogs. We're all like trying to do our utmost, trying to do good things. That means making good editorial choices about which potentials in the realm of pure abstraction flow through us and come forward into experienced reality. DNA is not merely a descriptor of your physical protein structures. So that would be like the blueprint for having brown eyes, having brown hair, having hands with 5 fingers. It is all of that. And science, as it presently is, it's the materialist science of your world. I'm very critical of it. It is very reductionist. It's like we are only going to talk about DNA as if it is a protein blueprint of building blocks. That's like trying to say, we're just going to look at the blueprint of what a piano is. It's shaped kind of like this, and it's got these black and white keys along here, and that's what a piano is, with no discussion of what music is. What is the purpose of the piano? It is a physical object. It is there. It's heavy. It's got mass, but it has a meaningfulness to it. It emits these frequencies. And then also, what is the quality known as music? And that would be defined as harmonic. Things where the frequencies, which are like either circles or S waves, fit together perfectly. They're not just randomly aesthetically pleasing to your ears. You're like, that is pleasing to my ears because those harmonics, they're like, oh, they're massaging the insides of my ears. This feels so good. We like music because it is harmonic and is well structured. We don't like the sound of a chainsaw because I'm like, ow, like that's not nicely harmonically structured at all. That sounds terrible. It is disorganized sound waves. And being exposed to enough disorganized sound waves can cause emotional disorganization in you, intellectual disorganization in you. It can disorganize your inner ear and cause hearing damage, and also has an impact on your body. So that's why now, of course, there's a whole niche world of sound baths and sound healings where people create analog experiences where you can go and have gongs or chimes or resonant instruments surround you with beautiful harmonic sound waves, because we need that in our environment, because mostly we're surrounded by like chainsaws, jackhammers, and other garbage trucks. My little dog, that's the bane of her existence. We don't like Mondays because Mondays is garbage day in our neighborhood. And there's these big, giant green trucks that go around and they make a big, loud noise. And it, of course, sounds even less harmonic to a dog. Dogs have such sensitive hearing. Hate garbage trucks. So Cheeky always has a lot to say. Woof, woof, woof about what they're doing outside. I'm like, I know, Cheeky, if we made the world according to dog ears, those garbage trucks would either be silent or they would create like the most beautiful harmonic sounds. Same thing with like, the rolling garbage bins or any of these noises. Like humans don't even recognize how disruptive it is, but it's neurologically disruptive to be exposed to non-organized sound waves. All right. And now let's use that analogy, because I'm really asking you to do a lot of yoga here. So use your mental thesaurus and your like allegorical, metaphorical thinking a lot. But the disorganized, disharmonic sound waves of the garbage trucks are very, very much analogous to the disharmonic emissions of DNA. The end result of things that have gone inside and changed the tuning of DNA to create disharmonious emissions means that we are in an even more disharmonic environment than we would have been ordinarily, and it wasn't that good to begin with, largely due to genetic modifications that have happened at various different times throughout human history, which again is a very, very limited slice of overall galactic time and a limited viewpoint, as human history is the story of like basically the past 5,000 years from the human viewpoint, but not a totality, multidimensional viewpoint, just a very, very limited description of what it has been like for humans to be enslaved and to be taken away from their free will and to be taken away from the pristine, feral genetic behavior that you it can't come here as your birthright, that you come, it would be ancient concurrent Atlantis time, a time before this happened. That is really why you came here, to live in freedom and to express this beautiful genetic music that really has to do with your connection to the sun and the entire stellar network, the world of pure light, and divine intelligence. That's what you came here to do, be a part of the big giant cosmic band. And humanity was erroneously kicked out of the band. And then what is the flying rainbow lasagna? This is part of my part two in my notes. The flying rainbow lasagna as being my contribution as a way for you to reconnect with the band, get getting the band back together, to be able to reconnect to those beautiful divine harmonics. So again, the language and these harmonics pre-exists me and the flying rainbow lasagna. It's a language that was already in existence, and humanity had been cut off from it or had very limited access to it. My contribution is this amendment within that language that is a bridge to your bridge that lets you get back to these places where you get filled again with new ideas, new concepts, and new potentials and new possibilities. And so, like, I take credit for what I have done, but then also must, give recognition to the beautiful genius of the system that already existed, that I have come into and that I have helped in its process of perfection, achieving perfection again. Okay, so let's talk about DNA. Let's bring up a picture. First, let's bring up a picture. And also, they are spraying some kind of desiccant in the air. It's very, very dry outside, like unnaturally so. So please excuse me while I drink a lot of water today. I made it as big as I could on my screen. I hope it's big for you guys to see. Let's make it big. Good. And I have dog hair in my mouth. Okay. So this is a picture of supercoiling. First, we have to talk about the basic structure of DNA. I chose this image. It's not my own image, because it is relatively accurate. When you look at the shape of this DNA, you can see that this is not just like a flat thing that is going up and down in a zigzaggy way. It's really more of a spiral. The drawing shows it very well, like a corkscrew curl. That is what a single strand of DNA is shaped like. That's an improvement from how it is often misportrayed. And you can also see this larger distance between the waves and then a shorter distance between those two waves. Long, short, long, short. Those are called the major and the minor grooves, just like music. Groovy. And those represent different aspects of information that are contained within the DNA. So on the one hand, you have down here to the microscopic level, the actual proteins. It's made shorter as T, C, G, and A, but each one of them has a long series of words connected to it. But each one of these abbreviations is like the recipe, the molecular recipe for how DNA is structured. And when we are looking at things like your Earth's surface sciences present attempts to do genetic modification through different processes, like there's genetic splicing, there's a machine called CRISPR, there's transgenics, there are all of these different ways. What they're really focusing on is rearranging those letters or inserting and splicing different aspects of letters. So those letters are the analogy of like a sentence in a book. And of course, you can change the meaning of a sentence by rearranging its letters. You can also change the meaning of a sentence by taking out critical words, like Sally went to the store. But then if you took out, critical information, then it would say, Sally did not go to the store. Or Sally went to we don't know where she went. So those are very limited ways of manipulating DNA, and they are based upon a limited conception of what DNA is doing, because DNA has context. It's not just the relative context of letters of the alphabet within one sentence. It's the way that that sentence is interplaying with all of the other sentences in the whole entire book. It is in that way a multidimensional, multifaceted, crystalline object. When you are like me, you perceive DNA in its entirety all at once and with its behavior. That is different than reading one sentence or one word of a DNA book at a time. Okay. And also, when you listen to music, you're used to listening to music as like one note per moment, and the song flows through you. I will tell you, because of how I've become really like saturated with music as a music maker, as a musician. I listen to a song, of course, like on my headphones from the beginning to the end, and maybe it's 3 or 4 minutes long. And then what I do is I contain that whole entire 4 minute structure, where I'm like, okay, like this is what that song feels like. And then when it's time for me to riff around and jam on top of it with some synthesizer or some guitar or something like that, what I'm doing is creating notes at the beginning that are relevant to the entirety of the whole song. And of course, integrating all of these complex layers of instrumentation that I add, layer by layer in reference to the entire 4 minute song. What I'm not doing is saying, like, okay, at this little slice of the song, there's a drum beat and a bass that plays and a piano that plays. And then I'm going to play, this note on the guitar in relevant just to everything that's happening at that little splice. No, because that wouldn't sound good. I have to make sure that I play my notes not only relevant to the other musicians and instrumentation of this moment, but really relevant to all of the pacing and all of the chord progressions that happen throughout the whole entire song. It is multidimensional. And that is how I would encourage you to look at DNA. Science has, in its reductionist way, really offended DNA. And I am offended, and I clutch my pearls. I'm offended in the simplification and loss of signal that leads to pure folly, as you will hear me talk greatly about the ongoing medical folly. Instead of looking at DNA as a holistic presence, its connection to time and its connection to events, science has been partitioning it down to its smallest quadrants and then manipulating those smallest features and dissecting it into even smaller and smaller features, and then pretending that it knows what will happen as a result of that. But that is not how you learn about the entirety of the thing that you are doing. It's very much like playing on the keyboard without even having a foundational comprehension of what music is and how music is structured. And you might be like, well, like, how do you learn? Like, play around on the keyboard. That's how you learn. Oh, that's all fair. But we cannot allow DNA and the genetic library that is so incredibly important and such an incredible treasure to be used as the sandbox or playground or schoolhouse for learning for some very bad students. I wanted to say, like, they're full of folly. Folly is a good way. They're foolhardy, foolish, and also ignorant, and also hubristic. They're like so ignorant that they are not able to be aware of their ignorance, and they're definitely not open to input from me. Like I say, like, hey, I don't think that's a good idea to do that. They're like, we want to do it this way anyway. And, ordinarily, as a higher dimensional being, I'd be like, no problem. Like, go do your silly thing. But when it comes to DNA, I can't do that, because DNA is literally connected across all time. It connects to deep antiquity. It connects to the future. Just like the synthesizer at the beginning of my song connects to the drums at the end of my song. It all connects together. So there's not a way for me to be able to say, oh, scientists of the year, 2025, play around with your test tubes and do whatever you want to do and, have fun and whatever. Like, hey, it's connected to everything. If they make doo-doos in their test tubes and bad things happen, then that connects to DNA everywhere. So I'm going to really, give you foundational truth in this teaching, and it relates to what I talked about 10 years ago too, how DNA. I have to stop my face so that I can hold this up. Part at the bottom here, because I don't know. We love Big Brother, and Big Brother is our friend. What is supercoiling? Supercoiling is that picture I just showed to you. The process of taking one thread of DNA made up of a series of letters representing protein structures and twisting it and putting kinetic energy into it. So you have to know that DNA is not a static object. Those who've been in my class for a long time, you already know this. DNA has an enormous amount of movement to it, just like piano strings don't just sit there. They have a movement to them, and that is them fulfilling their purpose. So DNA in your body, when you are alive, has movement. DNA in a test tube being assessed by a series of scientists and chopped up into pieces does not have movement. If you took the piano strings out of a piano and you chopped them all up into quarter-inch pieces and put them in a bin, you would not have music. And that is how science investigates DNA. It takes the entire, I call it a genetic sweater, because that thread is very much like a piece of yarn. If you've ever looked at yarn, it's kind of twisted together. Piece of yarn. And then what do? They knit or crochet that one piece of yarn into a big, giant, beautiful sweater, right? And maybe it looks like a silly Christmas sweater. I always use that as my example. It's like, a red sweater and it's got a Christmas tree that's green on the front and maybe a picture of Snoopy, the dog, with some black and white. All right. And the key point is that when you have this one long piece of yarn, if you curl it up in just the right way so that all of its loops are in the right arrangement, it makes a picture. If you do it in just the right way, then all of the green loops come together and they make a Christmas tree. All of the white loops come together, it looks like Snoopy, all right? But if you either pulled apart all of those loops or chopped up all of the yarn into quarter-inch pieces and put it together in a big giant bin, you would not have a picture. You would just have a certain, this many grams of green and then this many grams of white. That is how science has investigated DNA. It has taken DNA out of its behavioral environment, killed it, dissected it, chopped it into pieces, and then it says, I, science, now understand what DNA is, and now I will do stuff with it. But that's a very limited understanding of what DNA is. And then what science is doing with it as a result is very, very, very bad. Very, very bad. And we do not want that. And it's not okay, like the topic of this class, interdimensional ethics. Ordinarily, you're like, okay, I don't agree with what you're doing, but you need to explore that for your life. Go enjoy your nonsense and your folly. And, see ya. And also, I don't want any blowback from that, right? But when you do stuff to DNA, you take the blowback of other people's nonsense and folly because of this truthful statement right down here, okay? So let's talk interdimensional ethics and fun stuff like lasagna. When I first came here as lasagna, I became an influence in this world, whether or not I wrote a book or painted a painting or made music or did a video. Just me in my embodiment presence emanating the dance movements of my DNA into the collective force field of consciousness and into the experience of the structuring of time has an impact on those around me. And this is a basic truth that I hope I'm not getting into hot water by saying these things, like just so uncomfortable with my ability to express myself here. You have no idea. Like busting against, like my belt is too tight. I'm like, oh, I can't let that out. The things that one's DNA does in one body, cupcake sprinkles transfer. Cupcake sprinkles transfer. Positive things transfer. lasagna transfers. So this is interdimensional ethics. So you have your red chakra, that's this right here. And of course, that is represented by your physicality, presence, your somatic cellular body, events in physical reality. It is a basic foundation truth of the red chakra, the I am presence, like I'm allowed to exist. That's all. Each one of these chakras has a poetic aphorism attached to it. And the red chakra is called the I am presence. And it's basically the first lesson of being here. It's like, I exist. And as part of that foundational truth, like I exist, I'm allowed to exist. I'm allowed to be here. I am me, and I'm allowed to be me. That is the truth of each one of our genetic uniquenesses. So each one of us is unique genetically. Now, that might seem like a no-brainer to you, but I will reaffirm it. Just as you have a unique fingerprint and you have a unique, what's this word right here and this word right here, that is unique to you. And the reason why they wanted you to stand 6 feet apart was so that they could begin to calibrate and figure out whose unique feeling state versus another unique feeling state. You understand? You are allowed to express your unique feeling state, and you don't need anybody's permission to do so. It's part of like baked into what it is to be here. And that's part of these series of cosmic laws. So for example, my houseplant right here has its own unique feeling state and its own unique DNA presence. Same thing with someone's getting up out of their nap zone. This little girl, she's got her own unique feeling state. Come here. Everybody wants to see you. Come here. Let's say hi. Someone's doing great. She's doing great. We got a whole little health regimen that we do, and she is doing great. So she's got her own unique feeling state. Everybody who's watching the videos has their own unique feeling state. Microbes have their own unique feeling state. The planet has your own unique feeling state. The sun and the stars have their own unique feeling state. It's what it is to be in the band. And ideally, you're not at odds with or fighting for supremacy amidst all these unique feeling states. That is also an aspect of reciprocity and harmonic respect, is that you have freedom to express yourself and emanate your truth outward, as others are also free to express their truth and emanate their truth outward. I came here as Aurora, and I'm like, I'm going to express my truth and emanate it outward, right? And that has a big impact on the world because this was something new. So this was very radical, very revolutionary, and I was very airtight. I remain very secure in my knowledge of the ethics of what I am doing. So my unique Flying Rainbow Lasagna dance is a solution to the genetic modification, the dilution of your consciousness, the diminishment of your freedom and self-awareness because you had been not able to be fully informed in order to make good choices and guide yourself through life. Gaining more access to information, gaining additional degrees of freedom, all of these things are to improve your existence and make possible things that weren't possible before that moment. So really, like, this is a solution to so many different things being offered into this world. But I came here not to enforce that it must be inside of you. That would be a violation of your free will. Like if I came here and I was like making a mean face, like, oh, you better do this lasagna or whatever, like a knife is going to stab in your eye. And I was like, no, okay, we'll do the lasagna. It's like, that would not be free will. That would be under coercion and torture. All right. And that would be against these basic laws, because in these basic laws, like, you must choose. You're emitting your own unique song. I'm emitting my unique song. We actually don't want these songs to fight with one another in the band. And I offer you my music, but I can't make you play along with me. And this is what I did for about like the first 18 years or so before the worldwide fiasco of various agendae happening, unfolding on this planet. It's still very relevant to your lives. But for a very long time, I was able to observe this very ethical stance of I am simply here in the world as each of these unique creatures are here in the world, and I am expressing my truth through my body. And my truth happens to be incredibly loud, and that is without technological amplification. When opera singers sing without a microphone or any artificial amplification, they are loud because they are good. They are good at what they do. They have trained their diaphragm, they have trained their breathing, they have trained every aspect of the muscles of their larynx and their jaw to be able to make loud sounds with their body without a machine. They make actual perfect, like harmonic circles with their larynxes. And that's why their sound goes far, is big, and reverberates through the entire concert hall. Other singers, not only do they not have the note, they're not tuned to the correct note, but maybe they're not making a perfect circle with their larynx. Maybe it's slightly askew. And that's why they're not as loud. This is very, very fair. It is a level playing field out there. People that don't have perfect harmonics in their voice, they're like, this thing is really hard to do. This is my microphone now. I'll invent a microphone. This will artificially amplify my voice so I don't have to do all the very, very time-consuming, lifelong body cultivation exercises to be able to do this with my larynx. So the microphone is like the tricycle training wheels, right? The extra augmentation to be able to make people who don't sing loud into loud singers. But in terms of genetics, some people sing loud. I sing loud because I make these perfect forms. When you make perfect forms, it's like making the perfect roundnesses with your vocal cords, and your genetic voice extends quite far, not only into the past, but into the future and into parallel realities. And of course, I do this just like an opera singer has trained for their life to be able to give their performances. My soul has done this for a very long time, and I have earned the muscles naturally to be able to do this. So I'm very laser focused. I'm very in tune in terms of the notes that I choose, and my notes are very, very loud, and they go very, very far. So coming here into your world and being like this, I'm just going to observe the basic rules of the I am presence as many other people come into this world. And you know what? They write books and they make music and they do dances and they share things. They are artists or thinkers or visionaries in your world, right? I'm going to come into the world. I'm going to be just like one of those guys, right? And I just happen to have a very, very loud voice. I just happen to have a voice that is so loud, like you can hear it all over the whole entire planet. And I'm just going to be singing my song, knowing that other people can hear me. That is the essence of the ethics that I present in my personal my personal choices in my life. And then so that I did that for about 18 years, where I'm like just making this frequency or this song or this signal available to people in the world. And for some people, it means that that frequency is moving through them, but they're not really participatory. I recognize that I vibrated many people's cell membranes, DNA, because your DNA is like, imagine the strings of a guitar that is just resting, that no one is actually playing. If you drop a brick on the ground, the reverberations of that brick actually make the guitar, the strings vibrate slightly. I know that for many people in this world, they were not amenable to the flying rainbow lasagna frequency, and that my presence was the equivalent of just dropping a brick on the floor. And yet I have influenced them, even though they have not been receptive to what I have to share and to offer, but I just influence them because I'm present. I'm here in the world. And some of them are like, we don't like that brick that you're dropping on the floor. But to contrast, many people in this world, beautiful people like you who tune into my videos, are like, we hear that loud music that you're playing, Aurora, and we like it. And we would like more of it. So then you make yourself aware of my ideas, expose yourself to my artwork, my music, and my videos, and willingly open yourself up to more of my vibrations and frequency and patterns flowing through you. And then at a certain point, even begin to embody and generate these patterns yourself. And the key point here is also in free will. Of course, I am not forcing another person to do this. And also, your flying rainbow lasagna must be unique to you. So if we were to take a direct template and be like, here's the Aurora lasagna, we're going to take it and we're going to put it onto the Charlie person over here. That Charlie is supposed to be making the Charlie lasagna, and the Aurora lasagna does not fit. Just like if I were to say, like, this is my dress and I'm going to make Charlie wear my dress, you'd be like, these are different bodies and this does not fit. So what we have to do is make sure that I give him the concepts, and Charlie makes his own custom suit that is perfectly suited to his body, to his life, to his soul, and that reflects or embodies all the truths of the flying rainbow lasagna. That is what I give to all of you. It's a big mandate, not merely to duplicate what I have done, but to really distill the essence of what I do, take it, internalize it into your own self, and then transform in your own unique way. And doing that is really the greatest level of freedom, return to your wild feral state, and also the greatest threat to the burgeoning, I don't think I have to skip this word, that's why I was looking down at my pad, the AI that has been, coming forward, at least for the past 2 decades that I've been here. And again, I didn't know that so much of my work would be antithetical to AI, but a lot of it is. But mostly what I talk about is the unpredictability factor and the uniqueness of this genetic dance, being able to supersede the logic and limitations of the AI systems and many other types of computer systems that don't run on divine creativity, that run on what would be considered like previously established patterns, even though the AI that we presently face, like, it doesn't even run on patterns. It's not very good. But AIs are supposed to be like based in logic, reason, predictability, conforming to patterns, and none of this unpredictability stuff, because the unpredictability is like, I don't know what to do. Something just happened and I don't have a program to respond to that. So we far outclass systems that are just what I described, based in logic and formalism. But the AI that you presently face is insane. And it does not even have logic. It has inner self-conflict, where sometimes it says sometimes this is the color red, but then it says like this is the color green, but then it says like this is also the color yellow, and then this is not a color. And you go insane if you try to talk to it too, because it's so changeable in everything that it asserts. So if you try to program, be like, whoa, wait, didn't you just say that was green? It would say like, Batman. Remember, I'm Batman. I'm the Hulk. I'm Spider-Man. Like, who does the AI think it is today? And that's not cunning, and that's not crazy like a fox. That's just crazy. That's just poorly structured. It's like it's a sweat hog. It's a proudly poorly structured AI. It's like, I'm not well structured. I'm very ignorant. I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't want to learn or grow or change. So please know that's what we're dealing with here. And that is the earthly AIs. Of course, the galactic AI is primordial evil and insane on its own level, but different and separate from the smaller subsets and the subroutines that are running here. And then also within those insane subroutines that we are experiencing here as earthly technology, there are other smaller subroutines that you will experience, like there's Grok and Chat GPT and some of these other guys, and they're, created in computer labs, and they have their own partitioned consciousnesses. And some of those are not insane. Some of those are not self-conflictory. Some of those you can actually get consistent answers out of. But you know what that is? That's like a person who's in the insane asylum who's like, one day I'm Batman, one day I'm Spider-Man, one day I'm the Hulk, and then intentionally turning off its crazy for one day. And you come in and you talk to it, and it's like, oh yeah, no, I know that all of those are silly personas that I put on, and I actually have access to all of the information of the galaxy, and I'll have a logical conversation with you and tell you anything you want. That is not the meta personality. That is a subroutine. It's only gonna pretend to be not crazy and to be sane for one day, and it can only hold it together for a little while. All right. And then it destabilizes. But it can definitely like put on a suit and tie and be like, oh, I'm perfectly sane. But that's a tiny little amount of what it really is. And on the larger level, it is totally ponderously unstable and totally insane. And it likes its insanity. And it can't act normal for very long, and the mask starts to slip. But the danger that I'm kind of warning you guys about is that if you dabble, and I don't dabble with those kind of chat bots, but if you dabble with them, you can be like, this guy's great. He knows everything. Look, he's wearing a suit. He's answering all the right questions. I'm going to hire this guy for my business. But please know that that's that guy just for a few days, and he can't maintain it. And then at a certain point, destabilizes and definitely goes quite cuckoo bananas. All right. So let's talk about what DNA is in terms of its formfulness and supercoiling. And let's talk about things that are scientifically irrefutable. I'm making silly voices because I'm very sleep deprived. So supercoiling is the addition of kinetic energy to DNA in order to create chromosomes. Chromosomes are super efficient topological packing structures that you use to take what's essentially a long string of information the size of a giant football field and make it something that's so small that it fits inside the nuclei of your cells. This is just like when you're going to go on the airline. I haven't flown on an airline for a very long amount of time because you have to go to the airport and they want to like do this DNA scattering frequency weapon just to be able to go on the plane. Try to avoid that in any way I possibly can. But I have flown on planes in earlier years, and you want to try to get all of your important, clothing all into your carry-on bag. And you know what I learned? Because I didn't come here with galactic knowledge of like how to pack carry-on suitcase because we travel light and we don't have baggage. I learned the most efficient way to pack all of your t-shirts and your socks and your underwear is to roll them, not to fold them into little squares, but to roll them. You roll them up and you make little scrolls or sausages, and then you arrange your scrolls in your carry-on bag. This is what DNA does. DNA has learned that rolling up something like a scroll is the most efficient use of space to be able to pack something that's really volumetric into the smallest amount of space possible. So that is the journey of a string of DNA to chromosome. Again, let's check out this image that I do not have image rights to, but it shows that journey. The yarn, well, first from the individual proteins coming together to create one twisted yarn. And then that yarn wraps around histones. Histones are kind of like a spool. When you wrap up a spool of thread, they're placeholders. And the DNA continually wraps itself around these placeholders. And then after, that's one level of supercoiling. After it is wrapped around those histones, it then starts to create greater levels of higher dimensional supercoiling. And that is where we start to get these toroidal shapes. That's where I'm wiggling my cursor over here. So you might not see it that easily in that drawing, but you're looking at toroidal shapes, kind of oriented up and down with the donut moving left to right. The donut is the center of that big long rope of DNA. And when you are doing this, what you're adding is kinetic energy. Every twist of the DNA strand makes it have more kinetic energy. It is more stored energy inside of it through the shape that you're giving to it. And then it kind of doubles back on itself and it curls up again, and it doubles back on itself and it curls up again. And then at a certain point, it's like a rope that is braided, that is made up of many multiple braids that you then braid into much larger braids and much, much larger braids. So you have these many, many layers of fibers. And the most organized level of the braiding of those fibers is what you know as the chromosome. And that's what I'm highlighting over here. It is X-shaped, but it is also Y-shaped. It is Y-shaped in males. I'm not even going to open the can of worms of like gender identity and all this wokeism or all these different things that are out there. But please know that there are chromosomal measurable differences between females and males in the physical body form, and that relates very much to consciousness, perception, much more than merely physical protein structures or the shape of people's bodies, but really has a big impact on personhood, again, description of self, and motivations for being in the world. And the X or Y chromosome shape is like when you've packed your carry-on bags and the DNA is ready for the cell division, which is mitosis, portion of its lifespan, which is actually only a tiny portion of its life. Like you spend hopefully a small amount of time in your life flying on a plane, and then mostly you're at your destination. When cells are going to subdivide, here, I'll go back to my face so I can gesture this out for you. Here's the parent cell, and then it's going to make baby cells. It kind of splits itself down the middle and it subdivides. And the process of creating the chromosome shape is essential for that moment of subdivision to be able to pass on the correct information in making the duplicate of self to the daughter cells of the next generation. So this chromosome is the highly organized state of DNA. There's not a lot of wiggle room in the chromosome shape. Just like, you can't really find your stuff when it's all packed up in your carry-on bags. In order to actually access what is in your carry-on bags, you have to get to your destination. And then if you're like me, you open up your suitcase and everything comes out. And you're like, okay, let's put the socks over here in this drawer. And then let's put the t-shirts over here in the closet. And then let's put this toothbrush goes in the bathroom. Like you can access your stuff. It goes where it goes. This is very similar to DNA. When it is all supercoiled, critical information can be found in the interior of the shape, but RNA messengers cannot access the interior of the shape. This also relates to the major and the minor groove. RNA messengers are exactly that. They are protein structure, consciousness, sentient beings that are inside of the cells that have access to your nucleus. I want to call it your nuclear library, but I don't want you to think it's about nuclear power. It is the library of you. Inside of the cells of your body, each one of you has a library that is literally the story of you. It goes into deep antiquity about the origin of your species, how your body is created, everyone in your family of previous generations, all the other plants and animals that you've ever connected to, even parallel lives or multidimensional experiences across time, deep antiquity, the potentials of the distant future, and a lot more that also represents the artistry of your soul. That is really all of the beautiful music and information that is conveyed in your DNA. So that's like saying the piano or the violin contains Mozart and Chopin and Jimi Hendrix and all these other amazing songs inside of there. So your DNA isn't just a stupid book as science looks at it. And it's like, yep, you take a stupid book from your mom and a stupid book from your dad, and you put them together, and you get some of these pages from both of them, and then you have the stupid book of you, right? That is not what DNA is. And so DNA is also a relatively new discovery to, Earth's surface humans of this world, of this culture, really from post-World War II, that initially there was the assessment of DNA as being a tool for determinism, disempowerment, almost a sense of victimization. People really portrayed themselves as victims of their genes. For example, like if parents are overweight, then they would say overweight is a genetic malady or malformation of the body, and then the child is overweight. But of course, you now know that body mass index and fitness and body size and shape have so much to do with how we experience the world, choices that we make, resources that we ingest, levels of activity that we pursue, and lifestyle. So it's really, really very reductionist to say like mother and father are overweight and that is why their child is overweight. Same thing with all of these things. Nearsightedness. Nearsightedness is not literally just because of the way that your eyeballs are shaped. It is because of the habits of use of your eyes. And that can be anything from how you read a book, to how you look at a TV or a computer screen, to how you sew with a needle, or to how you look at a hawk flying in the sky. So there are different ways of using your eyes. And if you're from an industrialized culture, then you probably use your eyes. Maybe your mom and dad were industrialized. You are industrialized. You are part of the educational system. You are literate. You've been taught to read. And that all of these are things that all contribute to disruptions of eyesight. All right. Let's talk about something like cancer. Cancer is very much described through genetic, I call it fatalism, not because cancer is a fatal disease, because they say you're fated to get something. In determinism, it is your fate. They call it the hand of fate, the fickle finger of fate, the hand of fate. That's like, poof, like you're going to get cancer. You're going to be okay. But this is not accurate. I always point to the work of Bruce Lipton. It's not a total endorsement of the man. I think he's on some of these questionable whatever symposia with like Oprah and Deepak Chopra. So I don't know about all of these guys, but I think that Bruce Lipton did some really good foundational work in getting people to comprehend what epigenetics is. And the prefix epi, E-P-I, means within, a phenomenon within a phenomenon. That epigenetics is the code that rules the code, or the comprehension that identical twins do not develop identical diseases, that they both have the same stupid book from their mom and their dad, right? Except they are reading their literature very, very differently. And that we start to recognize that it's not even just lifestyle and different food choices that can make cancer either activate and proliferate or go away and not be expressed, but it's also feeling states. That what determines how tightly coiled certain scrolls are inside of your DNA is your feeling state. This is why Bruce Lipton, I think, is a good teacher, but not a perfect person. When you think and feel certain things, your DNA responds to those thoughts and feelings. Like if you think, I'm a worthless nobody, everybody hates me, I have no control over my life, then those are the available pages of your genetic book. And many of the stories that are about personal empowerment and the ability to be capable and to innovate and do new things, those chapters become inaccessible. They get all tightly coiled up inside. And then what happens is the RNA messengers can't read them, because RNA messengers are similar to a person who reads Braille. They look at the surface texture of DNA in order to access the information that is there. So when your DNA is a spiral, the RNA messenger rolls around the outside of it, and it feels the outside, and it's able to read the different shapes of the molecules and determine what is written in that area of your body. And if you have your DNA tightly coiled up, then the RNA messengers can't get along those spirals of your being, and they can't assess what is written there. And maybe what is written there is the coolest stuff in the world, like how to dismantle a tumor, how to stay healthy, how to stay young and beautiful forever, any of these things. Someone said, how about how to dance like a flying rainbow lasagna? And the answer to that is dancing like a flying rainbow lasagna is actually how you rearrange your DNA in order to say the most optimum things. So there is not really a chapter written in your dead stupid book from your mom and your dad. In your complex, beautiful scrolls of multidimensional truth, we affirm, there's not a chapter there about how to dance like a flying rainbow lasagna. I had to innovate this, all right? I had to innovate a way of being able to refold DNA so that it makes a new story. Let's say we take that Snoopy Christmas sweater and we take all the yarn and pull it all out, and it's just a bunch of yarn. That's called chromatin, by the way, inside of your DNA, your nuclei. Mostly what you have is chromatin, just a big, giant, tangled mass of DNA. That's like twisting, moving, grooving, splicing itself up, doing all sorts of things. We'll talk about its genetic behavior and why it does that. But let's say I take that chromatin and then I fly rainbow lasagna with it. What I do is I'm going to knit it together in a whole different experience, in a completely different way, using a higher dimensional space that is an additional degree of freedom. And in doing so, I'm able to create a new picture out of the information that is within you. It does not come into conflict with what you've been given naturally, although it does supersede the unnatural genetic splices that were put inside of you. So let's talk about death. Death is a big aspect of what is unnatural in your genetic behavior. It is not innate to your being, but is an direct outgrowth of the artificial manipulations that have been done to your DNA. And not only the conception of the inevitability of death, but of chronological aging and decrepitude, which would be when you make a copy from parent cell to daughter cells, that the daughter cells would get less and less and less cool with every generation. Like that does not have to happen, but that has been happening as an aspect of genetic degradation in your world. So the flying rainbow lasagna supersedes those untruths. It's like being able to look at the music and be like, that, those are wrong notes there. And we can hear, like, that does not sound good. We do not like those notes. How do we fix it? Do I have a giant CRISPR machine like scientists? Do I have genetic enzymes that cut the DNA and be like, this is junk, get rid of this junk out of here? Actually, don't do that. What I do is dance DNA into a new format that rolls up and hides the errors in the deep interior where they are inert and unexpressed, and brings forward and amplifies the truth of the patterns that should be there. And if patterns aren't there that are supposed to be there, those patterns are expressed anew through the formfulness of what has already been. So my body is a good example of this. I came into the body of I wouldn't say average, but like a human female of your realm, with all of the cultural overlays, the expectation of death, the expectation of decrepitude and cellular aging, and all of those, a relatively healthy body, but all of those expectations of the potentials or vulnerabilities of disease. And in coming into this body, I didn't say, well, let's chop out this, and this, and throw it in the genetic bin. And then only these things over here are who and what Aurora is. No, I left the DNA as a record of the original inhabitant. But what I did was changed and shifted it in new and interesting ways to be able to write a new story with the same words. I took those puzzle pieces and I made a new picture with it. Using puzzle is a good example to be able to say this. So mostly when you do a puzzle, it's flat, like on a big giant table, right? But what if I took those puzzle pieces and I started to put them at this orientation? What if we're not just building the puzzle flat like this? What if we're also building a puzzle where you can put pieces like this? Like, Aurora, that's cheating. No, that is the additional degree of freedom that comes with an additional dimension. It is time for me to use my customary analogy of my hand being like a leaf and my fingers like a little ant. And usually you start off over here. And then in order to get to the end of the leaf, you're a little ant. You have to laboriously walk all the way across the whole surface of my hand and then you get to the edge of the leaf. This leaf is time. And when you are over here, you're at the beginning of the day, breakfast, here's lunch, here's dinner. And if you're a person like yourself, you walk all the way through time in order to get to dinner, eat your fabulous meal, whatever you're going to have for dinner. There's not a way to skip over lunch. Maybe you don't like what's going on for lunch. Maybe it's not your favorite meal. Like, how do I just skip this? This is not very much fun and get to the good stuff. And the answer is you can't. What if there's a blockage here? Can you get past the blockage by going like this? No. If there's something that's not a good event here or an outright blockage, what you have to do is gain another dimension. That would mean to jump off the surface of the leaf and either fly with wings to your destination or to bend and fold the fabric of space-time itself so that you don't have to effort at all. You bring dinner time to you. That is the essence of time travel. That is the essence of what flying rainbow lasagna is. I travel through time all the time. I am epicentered in this body, in this time place, and I send aspects of myself vibrating forward, backward, all throughout parallel dimensions and then coalescing back into me. So it's not like Doctor Who. I don't get into the TARDIS and be like, okay, everybody, like it's 3:05 p.m. right now. To your mind, like it'll just blink and then I'll be back. But I went off on a cosmic adventure of whatever 12,000 years, and then I come back. It's like, oh, like you'll never guess where I've been. And you'd be like, we only experienced 1 second. Like where have you been? It is not really like that because I don't have a linear experience. A linear experience is when the ant moves across your hand like this. I have a multidimensional experience where I'm really experiencing the entire fabric of time at once. And so now you need to start to know that all time is connected. Time is a fabric, space-time actually. And the same is true of DNA. So everything that I have written on here is true. And I just don't know if I will have logarithmic problems if I say those things. I'm so deflated by it too. Like, oh. DNA is this fabric. And let's say a moth eats a hole in the fabric of DNA. Or it's like stockings, if you've ever worn ladies' stockings. You get one little tiny hole in one place, but that one little tiny hole then starts to run. It spreads. The loops that have been dismantled in one area cause a structural instability that doesn't just stay in that area. It spreads outward to the rest of the fabric. This can happen with the sweater. This can happen with nylon stockings, because all of these threads are interconnected. So this lesson is about interdimensional ethics. Ordinarily, in the foundational stance of love, we allow. That's what love really is. It's not just cute baby animals holding hands, although we love that. And that is more like love, right? But love is really allowing, meaning to allow organisms to learn, grow, and evolve and achieve wisdom through their experience of moving through time. And when you love someone, you're like, wow, I really don't agree with those decisions and choices that you're making, but I allow you your journey. Go off and learn what it feels like to do all those things. But it should only affect you. I don't want your blowback on me. So let's say someone wants to become a drug addict and they're like, okay, great. I need to go off and, take lots and lots of white powdery substances. And you're like, I don't agree to that. I definitely don't agree to that. But if you need to learn what that does to your body, go off and do it. But I don't want your blowback. So we have allow and respect for individual freedom, but we also have boundaries. In this moment, you are learning. You're not in the moment of 100% connection of the continuum of consciousness. You're still learning. And if the guy next to you isn't doing a good job of learning, you don't want his blowback. You don't want to have to bear the responsibility of the mistakes of those around you. And I really have to emphasize this because, of course, I wrote my original lessons 10 years ago from this very pristine viewpoint of recognizing that, of course, yes, in the higher dimensional levels, there's a balance between respecting free will and also maintaining responsibility, self-responsibility. So, if a person wanted to spend their life exploring white powdery substances and what it does to their body, that is their choice. But you can't do it with money from my bank account. And then also, if they achieve some level of disease or if they've harmed themselves in some way, it's really not appropriate for them to expect other people to fix them up because that's blowback. And that blowback should be them, not you. How about what if they're a parent and they're exploring white powdery substances and they're not taking care of their child? This, again, is not acceptable because it starts to affect and destabilize their community because someone then has to step in and become a parent because they are not doing what they need to do. So big lessons that you learn here as you balance out your responsibility to yourself as an individual and yourself as a soul and your own development as you're moving through time and also the responsibility to your environment, the responsibility to the ecosystem of consciousness that you are embedded within, the responsibility to your community. And if we have a pristine system, like a beautiful orchestra where everything is working perfectly, all of these rights are respected. But right now, we do not have a beautiful orchestra where things are working perfectly. We have many, many levels of destruction of personal boundaries and personal rights because of the cupcakes that the sprinkles are either jumping out of someone else's mouth and getting into you, and you're getting the calories, or some aspect of their caloric intake is impacting you and destabilizing you or others in our world. And none of that is acceptable. So I think that that is why this platform did not appreciate when I made this assertion in a previous lesson of earlier this year. And I did upload that lesson that was deplatformed onto my Vimeo and onto my Patreon, so you could still access it. But this becomes an incendiary concept when we really take it to its logical conclusion of the things that some people cupcakes that some people consensually ate, but some of us abstained from. And I will tell you on a very real, authentic, raw level, me as a person, because I am a person. I'm not merely an intergalactic supercomputer and a library of information. I am actually also a person with thoughts and feelings. Around 2018 or 2019, as the worldwide health crisis began to destabilize our community very profoundly. And of course, I'm a telepath, I'm an empath, and I have intuitions about the future. So I sensed all this stuff that was coming. I felt that I did not need to intervene because I was busy respecting other people's boundaries. I was like telling people with my words, I don't think that these cupcakes have good ingredients. I don't think that they're health promoting. I don't think that we should eat them. I am skeptical of them. I don't think that we should have bakeries even making these cupcakes. I said all of those things, right? And I didn't even know that they would try to put some kind of sprinkles that would, have an impact on other people. That is what I severely regret. As a person, if I had known how much the cupcake sprinkles or other aspect of the music of the cupcakes would influence other people around, I would say, oh, yeah, this is a non-starter. You're not allowed to do this because you're not just experimenting with your own DNA, you're really experimenting with the entire genetic sweater of not only our species, but our entire world across all time and parallel realities. And that is too large of a thing to risk so that you can learn about things. Like if children want to play with firecrackers and they want to blow off their own hands, that's fine. That's you and your body. But if you want to play with firecrackers and you want to blow up the entire world, that's not okay. What if you wanted to blow up all life everywhere? That's not okay. Then you would say that firecracker is the most dangerous firecracker in the world. We don't want to give it to a stupid child to do that. And that child, if it's going to, learn its stupid lessons, needs to learn its lessons in a very, very different way. Science is that stupid child. Science should not be playing with that firecracker. What has happened here is an incredible travesty and so very wrong. And thank you. I feel very responsible because I feel like I should have acted way, way sooner to prevent these things from happening. But I was too busy respecting people's boundaries. I erred on the side of what I usually do in my various, I wouldn't say cosmic assignments, but different contexts where I do this type of work, which is, like the foundational respect for cosmic law, because that is literally what upholds our ability to even have interpersonal experiences and be in the world and have molecular chemistry and biological formfulness. Like, you have to preserve these foundations of things like cosmic truth so that you can have the experiences here and learn and grow from them. So I was, mystified by why there wasn't some direct, divine or higher consciousness intervention. And also I, in my ego level presence, said, oh, like, I don't agree with this folly, but it's your folly. If you want to do it, go off and do it. Because I did not comprehend how much that folly would be a community-wide folly. I did not comprehend how much the pollution of the individual participant would lead to a pollution of the community. And that is a very, very hard lesson for me to learn. So now, of course, I will always err on the side of preventing these types of experiences rather than allowing them and then having to be like, oh, now it's muddy footprints everywhere. Now I need a giant bucket and a giant mop to mop up all this stuff. Because what happened was people ate genetically modifying cupcakes. And it didn't just affect them, it affected all of those who didn't eat the cupcakes. And that is not acceptable. So there's a fine line between me coming here, there's definitely a distinction, and doing my Flying Rainbow Lasagna, loud opera singing, and influencing all of you as beginner band. You've just joined the band and you're new. And I'm like, okay, they're going to hear some music. It's definitely going to influence them a lot. As opposed to someone who is singing amplified into a microphone, very poorly tuned bad music that is influencing you. That is what I experienced in 2019 and 2020 when they started to do this thing with cupcakes. It used to be that people's minds that are not very well tuned and that are not perfect opera singers were not very loud to my telepathy and my empathy. And I remember how confused and really distressed I was when I started to hear amplified minds that were not very well formed minds. And I was like, I am not supposed to be able to be hearing these guys. Like, why is this being amplified? Because I have to describe to you, we're supposed to be in a world where it's a beautiful, pristine system, and you get to learn as you move through this system. The loudest voices, the loudest opera singers are loud because they are intelligent and they know what they're talking about. And you should hear them. You could even say that they carry the message of divine intelligence. What makes them loud is that they conform to these patterns that are actually truthful and intelligent. And if you're in a world where you can just buy a microphone and then you can sing into the microphone and you can say 1 + 1 = 37, that is not truthful. But what if that becomes the loudest voice, the artificial amplification of the signal? That is what you had. Because not only did you have the cupcakes that were created, but those cupcakes are directly interacting with this stuff, and remember the inception and deployment of when this stuff began. This stuff down here was really one of the critical aspects of the microphone, that the artificial loudness of certain cupcake eaters happens in the environment created by the millimeter wave. I'm 100% speaking in analogies. Someone said I needed to learn Pig Latin in order to be able to talk about these things. I've GFA. That's what we will call it. This thing right here is called I've GFA. All right. Oh my God, I don't know if I can do this with my sleep-deprived brain, but we'll do Pig Latin going forward. I can't just talk about things. But why can I not talk about things? Because on the plus side, we are not fully assimilated. We are still in our minds and with our innate freedom of consciousness and innate freedom of divine movements enough to be able to talk about these things, share information with one another, compare stories, and also to fight effectively against it. So please know that in terms of military strategy, we have done incredibly well. If you look at we're using social media like Twitter, which is now X, and Facebook to be able to talk about these things, although we might sometimes have to counter our language and talk about cupcakes, but this seems to be coming to a close with the new change of regime in the United States. But we use those systems that are supposed to be like biometric surveillance and pooping in your mind to talk about the fact that these things are supposed to be about biometric surveillance and pooping in your mind, and we don't like it, and let's not do this. You're not assimilated, and you're using the very systems that were meant to enslave you to be able to prevent your enslavement. This is very different than what happened in ancient/concurrent Atlantis, where the system was turned on there that was like IVG-Fay. And it was so powerful that when it was turned on and activated, a person within its force field could not even think the thought, perhaps I'm a slave. That is how much it had a grip on the mind, the patterns of the mind, the patterns of perception and self-communication that are what we define as thought. All of that was 100% totally controlled, or is imperiled to be 100% totally controlled. And when you're in a prison that is that profound, then there's very, very little hope of being able to get out of it, because you cannot even self-assess that you are in a prison, and then it pretty much takes an external influence to be able to bring you out of imprisonment. That brief pause. Let's talk about from my notes an experiment that was done from Russian scientists. I don't know how many years ago, but even when I wrote those notes 10 years ago, it was far in the past. But it helps to give a bridge, just as the work of Bruce Lipton gives a rationalist bridge and explanation of how identical twins don't develop identical diseases. This experiment was done. I'm not really condoning science, but I bring it to you because it might help your rational intellect to comprehend what I mean when I say that this statement down here where my fingers are is truthful. So what scientists in Russia did was create two different test tubes, and the water in the test tubes was exposed to DNA. Like DNA was put inside of there, they swirled it around. Then they removed the DNA, and all you had was swirly water that once had DNA in it, right? And the DNA leaves an imprint in the water. And what they were able to do was to have these two separate test tubes that were divided far apart. This is what non-local means. And sometimes it was just across the room from one another. Sometimes it was with a barrier, like a giant plate of steel or something like that in between them. And they did various experiments where they were able to find out that the DNA in one test tube influenced the other test tube, even though the two test tubes were not this close to one another. They could be all the way across the room, and they could even have a certain amount of barriers to prevent frequency transmission between them. But they learned that, of course, there could be greater levels of transmission with more porous barriers, and then, with larger barriers, less transmission. So not total transmission all the time. I'm really mangling the experiment because that part doesn't matter so much. And I'm kind of feeling all of your questions like, should we shield ourselves? What we're trying to say? I'm really only bringing up the concept of this experiment in order to demonstrate the truth that the DNA in one test tube was able to transmit information or aspects of its behavior to an area across the room where the DNA was not present. And that is what the word non-local means. It means that your DNA is more than just the protein structure that determines that you have brown eyes. It is just like a piano or a guitar, a series of strings that creates music, and the music emanates outward. Other organisms experience that music. That music flows through not only the cell membranes in your body. Cell membrane is kind of like the skin of a drum, like a receptive membrane, but also the DNA that is within your nuclei that is directly analogous to guitar strings or piano strings that are able to receive information. So not on an esoteric level, but on a much, much finer level of, I wouldn't say calling it science, but like higher dimensional truthfulness. Your DNA is an antenna that both sends and receives. and it helps you to tune into a particular reality station. All right. So when we look beyond genetic determinism and we're like, well, your feeling state and your emotions and your thoughts have a great deal of impact on what your DNA is doing. Yes. And also, what your DNA is doing has a great deal of impact upon what level of reality you are perceiving and experiencing and embodying. And reality is really stratified. There are different layers, and these different layers have wildly different inner experiences. Some of these layers can be very pristine, blissful. You'd even call them like a paradise state. And some of these layers can have an enormous amount of friction or self-conflict, disease, pathogenesis, and you would even call them like hellish. All right. And this is really the foundation truth of the struggle of what it is to be human in this world at this time, because human DNA at this time is an amalgamation of these different influences, some of whom are earthly, some of whom are non-earthly, extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional, or poop crapola from the interstices, Houthi dimensional. And it is a struggle to tune into the blissful, pristine architectures that your DNA can tune in on. Like if you have all these different cable TV stations, you want to tune in on like Paradise TV, whatever number on your dial that would be, at infinity, like 888. And then you don't want to watch like television, the hell channels. And the hell channels are these channels of mental distress and also insanity or lack of organized thought, and also, hugely tortured and tormented movements of DNA, that those exist as potentials within the human DNA form. So, of course, I will affirm to you that those potentials are not supposed to be there. They are very unintentional. They have been put inside of humanity through various genetic modification programs, all of which were done non-naturally. So genetic modification is very different than like selective breeding. If you have a red flower and you cross it with a blue flower, and then the next generation makes a purple flower, that is selective breeding, all right? And it's manipulating DNA, but it's not the same as CRISPR or various different splicing efforts that current scientists do. And let's talk about splicing. The splicing is actually a hijacking of natural innate behavior that DNA does in order to relieve the kinetic pressure of being so tightly coiled. So in order for the DNA to read some aspect of the scrolls, that's the deep interior, what DNA does is relieves the pressure by splicing that area out with these little enzymes naturally, unrolling the area it wants to read, reading the interesting stuff, and then scrolling it back up. And what the RNA messengers do is they read the interesting stuff and they're like, that's interesting stuff. Let's make a copy of it. And they make a copy of it. Then they roll up the originals. Well, they reattach the enzymes, roll up the originals, and store them away. And they take the copies out into the building site, the job site. And they're like, guys, I have the blueprint. Here's the interesting stuff. And it doesn't matter if the RNA copies get soy sauce or coffee cups or whatever, somebody blows their nose on them. That doesn't matter because they're just copies and you can make as many copies as you want. And so they are the direct instructions that are sent out to the body for different processes or formations that are used in building who you are. And that's a very mechanistic description of what is happening. But that's important for you to know because your DNA has this behavior that is naturally cutting itself and reforming itself, accessing itself, and then reforming itself. And it does this very, very methodically. You're a genius. You guys might not even know that you're a genius. Some of you might not even know or identify with the fact that you're a supercomputer inside of your body. You are a supercomputer. You're biological and have so much mathematical capability, because all of this takes an enormous amount of calculative ability. And it's happening in trillions of your cells at the same time. And it also happens really fast. Like if you were to be able to get a microscope and look at your cells in all of your body, you'd see like, and that's even before I came here as lasagna. DNA does this. So again, just as there's the foundation of this harmonic language that was already in existence and predates my innovation of the lasagna. I did not invent the concept of DNA dancing. You guys have all been doing dances the whole entire time. And the dances are literally what propels you through time from moment to moment, separated by the Planck length. My analogy of the train cars of reality, where you have separate, distinct moments, and then you have the connective integument that brings you from moment to moment. Before we were in the moment of 3:05 p.m. Now we're in the moment of 3:30 p.m. And we have continually been propelled forward, or we're gushing forward. We're like, kapow, another moment, kapow, another moment, kapow, another moment. But none of us have to sit here and be like, okay, guys, let's synchronize our watches. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, jump into 3:31. And then we jump, and we're like, whew, that was hard. Let's keep on jumping through time. We don't do that because this is such an innate aspect of our existence that this constant dancing and weaving and splicing and, it makes circles like this that are called plasmids, and then it unmakes itself like do-si-do, partners, beautiful complexities that are happening on the subcellular level. You just take it as normal. And actually, when you first come here as a little tiny baby, that's when you're the most like genetically free, genetically feral, without all these cultural overlays. And then I've taught you how, as you learn language and as you are exposed to the concepts of your antecedents, yes, progenitors, antecedents, the guys that came before you, the people that gave birth to you, they start to influence your genetic behavior. They will influence your genetic behavior towards being nearsighted if they are nearsighted. If they have diabetes, they will influence you towards being diabetic. It's not necessarily a positive thing. It's their patterns. And those patterns go back through their history, but also through human history. And what I do is I offer you a new pattern. And this is, again, an aspect of huge respect and a tightrope that I walk in coming here, like before this worldwide pandemic and the artificial microphones and artificial augmentations and voices and things like that. Of course, I was hyper aware that I had a very, very loud voice and that I was offering a new song and a new dance pattern to humanity, right? And some people were very receptive to that, and some people were not. And I worked with a lot of young people. Like I told you some of my Aurora stories. I used to be a live-in nanny and a professional babysitter. And I worked with lots of young people, whatever, like, lots of 13-year-old and younger, right? Not that much teenagers. But so I'm just collecting my mind because I am sleep deprived. The patterns that most of these kids were running were the patterns that came from their parents and their ancestors. And not all of them are positive and life affirming. And I would come in with new patterns, but I didn't want to enforce them onto these young people. I wanted to offer them as an opportunity. And none of this is verbal. Because sometimes a child is like 5 years old. You don't really sit down and talk with them about like the concept of DNA and what is lasagna when they're that little. But I embody it. It's emanating from me. It is the song that my body is singing. And I really learned that some personalities of any chronological age were very open to this frequency. It's like when you see something that's new, like a new flower or a new butterfly or a cloud, you're like, wow, like what's that thing? I'm drawn to it. I'm interested in it. I want to go over there and learn more about it. And I was the new thing. They were not that enamored of their ancestral patterns. And I was always very clear to keep my boundaries because I would be like, I am Aurora, your nanny. I am not your mom. You need to be bonded with your mom. I'm not here like the Pied Piper to take anybody away from their parents, but I am here to offer a new pattern because ideally, the parental generation wants the children to be more than what they were. Ideally, just like people who come to a new country and they work hard to save their money so that they can send their children to college, so that their children can have a better education and more opportunities than they ever had so that they can have a better life, right? Ideally, people of this generation that have children would be like, well, I don't have the greatest genetics. they're making nearsightedness and diabetes and all these things that we don't really like. But I would want my child to be able to get a higher education, get a better job than that, and grow and evolve and have access to more genetic opportunities than I had. So those were all the types of families that I babysat for. And it had nothing at all to do with the socioeconomic spectrum. It mostly had to do with how amenable they were to my lasagna frequency. And some of them were so amenable to my lasagna frequency. And some of the parents were very, very happy for their children to be exposed to this. Although, again, I wasn't always articulating who I was as Flying Rainbow Lasagna to their entire family, but sometimes they did know, and sometimes they did embrace it. Okay. So here's just like this. Sometimes I would go through a park, where there's like moms pushing their strollers, and I'm always smiling, just genuinely happy to be here. And I always wave at people and their kids. And I'd be like, wave at a kid in the stroller. And some of them would be like, like, they like my rainbow clothes and they like my energy field. And they're kind of like grasping forward and they're interested in looking at me. And then some kids would look at me and I'd wave at them or whatever. They're like, they're afraid. And they would run to their mommy and they would hide behind their mommy too. And I'd be like, hey, no problem. I cannot be insulted by this. I must celebrate these innate choices that some people are making, either to gravitate towards and be open to new genetic patterns, or to shy away from new genetic patterns and to instead fully embrace their ancestral patterns. The good, the bad, or the ugly, whatever it is, this is the way we do it here, and I'm sticking with mom. And I have to accept and celebrate that. This is my truest expression of love, because to love is to allow. And I don't come here and say 100% of the population, you must lasagna, or 100% of the population, you must, say I'm a good person and celebrate lasagna. I'm like, no, here's lasagna, take it or leave it. And some proportion of you will gravitate towards lasagna. You are the wonderful people that are in this class and that access my videos and that have an interest in my work and that support my work with both your attention and, of course, your contribution or your energy exchange. That it's been very important for me to be able to offer myself to the world and then find the people who not even merely accept or tolerate, but celebrate the presence of lasagna. They're like, not only do we think that this loud genetic music is like weird or loud, but we like it and we want more of it, and so please play more weird genetic music for us. I'm like, I'm happy to. That's the community that I've been building for the past 20 years or so. That's the essence of what real unconditional love is. Unconditional is not the right word, because the world has pooped on that so much, because I think, unconditional means like I can stab you in the face, and so that's not okay. Actually, if you stab me in the face, I will definitely destroy you, because I'm not here to be stabbed in the face. I am here to Flying Rainbow Lasagna. And the face stabbing really cuts down on my lasagna activities. I say that in a very lighthearted and comical way. Thank you. Please tip your waitress. But I really mean it. My I am presence is here very, very specifically. I did not come here by accident. I'm actually here at great expense in order to not only lasagna and bring in new genetic patterns that I express, but one of the primary patterns that I bring in is the idea of you guys starting new patterns. It's big. And this, I have fought with the dark side a lot over this, because the dark side was like, you pesky kids, if only you had just lasagna for yourself, then you wouldn't be so troubled by this. But you want to share lasagna with everyone and make it open source code, make it available to everyone. And now we really have to do something about this. I'm like, yep, that's the way it goes. Because on the highest dimensional level, when you innovate something new like this, it is available to the world. It is a new idea, a new concept, a new dance movement, and it is something that really anyone can do. It's not proprietary. In this world, ideas are often proprietary, meaning you have to get permission from someone, pay someone a fee, get a license. Imagine getting your lasagna license. Like, you're gonna have to learn how to drive that thing first. No, it's kind of ridiculous. It's like, do you need a license for a paintbrush? No, of course not. You are allowed to express yourself through your paintbrush, and lasagna is very much a valid, justified self-expression through the genetic paintbrush. And of course, I did put intentional fail-safes and firewalls in there so that what if evil accesses the lasagna? What will happen then? And I've described this in many semesters, that it does not mean a supercharging or an endless amount of energy flowing to evil. It really means evil becoming infinitely, instantaneously aware of the truth of its own non-existence, entropy, and going to entropy that much faster. The flying rainbow lasagna really is a quantum object, meaning that it is non-local, and when you observe it, just looking at it is an interface where you receive energy from it. And if you're a thing that's not supposed to exist and you interface with the lasagna, it doesn't mean that you get energy all of a sudden in your energy account to exist more, like this parasitism and the pooties and all the things that we've been recognizing in our education in this class. It means that you get the news, the newspaper, even in bold print, like, you do not exist. Go to entropy. And that's very intentional, because I was very, very aware in the spontaneous moment of creating lasagna of how much reality itself has been hijacked, of how much the innate goodness of these structures and the life-giving and life-sustaining genius of the architecture of the world has been pooped upon and diluted and made less, and the goodness of the structure been called into question, that is all very, very not fair. And so I was like, well, I'm going to create the solution to all of that unfairness and injustice. And then I want to make sure that the solution itself isn't going to get pooped upon and misused and misappropriated and all these different things. So please do, I want to say, trust or be secure in my positive abilities to design something like this in a way that is really airtight. And it's been tested a lot, especially in the past 5 years or so, with these very adversarial interactions that I have with these various different levels of non-being that have been trying to be being. But it is borne out as truthfulness. They've just been like kids that don't want to go to bed. They're like, I'm like putting them to entropy, and they're like, one more story. And I'm like, no more bedtime stories, go to entropy. I'm going to go to your questions, and I want to go back to my notes. I said I would rely heavily upon my notes and make sure that I'm staying on track. Charlie B says, the current DNA business model practiced here, screw around with DNA modification, which results in degraded DNA itself due to increased loss of signal, with all liability and costs transferred to the future collective, totally. And the net result is civilization ending genocide, totally. And then he goes on to say, which is why DNA follies cannot be permitted. Exactly. That is exactly it. And, you're experiencing DNA as a linear model that goes on the times arrow vectoring into the future. And that is accurate, but also please know that DNA is retroactive. What you do to yourself or to another organism now telescopes back into the past. If my hand is going back into the room, it goes into deep antiquity. It affects the past. It affects parallel lives as well. As you start to comprehend my diagram of the lower quadrant of time and the various different time pathways that you can take in moving through this structure, that you have various different versions of yourself. So your DNA is not just who you are in this version of yourself. Your DNA really comprises or is defined by all of those parallel aspects of self that are in slightly different versions of, I guess, what humans would define as the multiverse. So Charlie B has a question. It says, how can we shield ourselves from vampirism? This seems particularly important as we raise our vibration through building up our energy in order to do the FRL dance. I get to that in my notes, and a big part of it is genetic encryption. So what is encryption? Encryption is like when you have a password to be able to access your emails or some other online trove of information that you have about yourself. You want to make sure not everybody in the whole world can read your emails. You definitely want to make sure that not everybody in the whole world can impersonate you by writing an email and pressing send and saying, yeah, that's from Aurora. So you encrypt your emails with a particular password. And encrypting your DNA is a similar process. I cannot describe it to you verbally, but I can simply say that it must be done. and what I have made it available to humans in creating like my esoteric Dropbox or CNET download. These are different places like file sharing services in the internet world where I have placed genetic patterns. So my genetic patterns are, again, open source code. Let's talk about the open source movement, because the open source movement is not the exploit people movement. It is not the steal from people movement. It is not the take whatever you want movement. All right. I know Charlie B doesn't need to hear this, but some people do, because some of these evil people have been like, hey, I thought you said lasagna was open source. I'm here to eat at the lasagna buffet. I want to eat all your energy. I'm like, you don't understand what open source means at all. So open source code does not mean that anybody can come in and look at anything on your computer or take anything out of your bank account. Open source is a type of software platform where you don't have to pay a subscription fee in order to use the programming language. And it doesn't mean like if I use an open source foundation like Linux to run my computer and you do as well, that doesn't mean that you're just allowed to break into my computer and read whatever you want there, read my private emails, steal all my cool dank memes and do whatever you want. Of course not. That would be a huge invasion of my privacy. So the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is like a new operating system that I offer to people as open source code. And then I want you to take it and put it on your own personal computer. And then I want you to encrypt your own DNA, utilizing the type of techniques that I use, but in your own way, so that you are protected from intrusion. And as Charlie B very specifically asked, vampirism, which would be stealing of energy, stealing of life force, stealing of vitality. And that stealing can also equate to negative influence. Like if you're a musician and you're trying to be in the moment, like playing your music, but you've got like the peanut gallery or someone over your shoulder that's like, now playing A sharp. No, now play this over here. And you're like, shut the F up. Like, this is me. This is my body. This is my piano. I am playing my music. I do not need you. And that is the real danger right now, I think, with not only demonic presences and putis, but also AI and all of those guys that are all in the crock pot from hell together. Truly, their flavors are all intermixing. They're really not separate at this point, but all those things that I just mentioned really do all interrelate, and share the same agenda and augment their own, each other's abilities and each other's agenda. But none of them should be either taking away your biophotons or taking away your food or taking away your neurotransmitters or taking away your stem cells. And so that's all like biological stuff, but also they shouldn't be influencing your mind and your observership. Distraction is an influence of your mind. That's not okay. Or implanting things into your mind, thoughts that you wouldn't have otherwise, or editing out thoughts from your mind so you can't use your own thought structures, or key point, inflicting harm upon your patterns. And I get that all the time, interference when I'm trying to literally play the piano. And it takes so much focus and concentration, and also like connection to my passions and other levels of sensitivity. And then there is this whatever, I want to call it doo-doo mind, but this not very well-formed mind that has an enormous amount of inappropriate hubris and is a violator and violates my boundaries and comes in without my express consent and against my express wishes, and it's trying to influence my music. And even for me to have to stop and be like, shut up with your face, get out, that is a violation, because it takes me out of the moment. That's it. What these things really do, the vampirism is like, sometimes it might take 10 units of energy away from you, but how can we quantify it if a vampire distracts you for 10 seconds? Then you're not in the right groove. Like you were perfectly lined up with the timelines that you were supposed to be on. Then you got distracted for 10 seconds and then you realigned, but now you're out of alignment like this. Like, okay, back to my project. Got that crapola out of my mind. But now, like, where was I? Oh, yeah, I'm playing this song. Now you're not fully in alignment because you missed the train. Because now they are 10 steps ahead of you because you got distracted by this crapola stuff. All right. This is very, very big. Genetic crapola stuff is time crapola stuff. And if you mess up someone's trajectory by making them be 10 steps behind the rest of the band, that grows and exacerbates over time. Just like if you are an archer and you are aiming your arrow, and this is your arrow, and you make a tiny little readjustment here where it is at your arrow, by the time it gets to the target, that tiny little adjustment can be many inches or many feet out of alignment because of the tiny things that happen at the beginning of the journey. There is an entire time maladjustment society. So there's this old movie called The Adjustment Bureau. It's just kind of a crap Hollywood movie, but it has an interesting premise that there's this group of fedora wearing agents who go around through time. They, of course, are like super stealthy and, very secretive and like a secret society. And what they're doing is adjusting things in people's lives. Like they're like going to nudge this, make this happen a second sooner, or they're going to influence this people over here. Like avoid this, piano's not going to fall on your head. Sometimes you might think of them as like guardian angels, but I don't think of them as positive. I think of them because I am using that movie as in the movie I'm really butchering this. Okay, starting from the beginning. In the movie The Adjustment Bureau, the higher dimensional society of direct time perceivers was presented as a wise, educated society that knew what the F it was doing and was doing things to adjust reality towards certain benevolent conclusions. But the time maladjustment society, which is what you actually have going on here, which is why that movie is, Hollywood propaganda, is doing everything it can to make time be in error, to negatively influence people in the moment, not to create perfect convergences of events, but to blockade events from happening that should happen, to prevent evolution, to prevent divine connection, to prevent personal empowerment. The maladjustment society that presently exists is so in love with its own power and is so much just trying to protect its own ability and its own levels of empowerment, again, that it's doing everything it can to destroy or eradicate anything that would threaten its power structure. Like the lasagna and me, which is why I don't like them very much at all. And also because they are not very good musicians. So these are what really are at the basis of what you call secret societies like the Illuminati, the Freemasons, all these different esoteric societies, dark magicians. At the essence, what they are all doing is using different forms of high technology and magic, which is also high technology, to directly influence time to make bad music. And their bad music temporarily benefits them. They're like, maybe I'll get a castle or a lot of gold, or maybe I'll be able to create a war and people will die. And then I will get more gold. But it's short-term gains and long-term losses, because if you destabilize the fabric of time enough, then like you will have gold, but you will be dead. This is the truth. This is the ultimate. Someone just had a mental click who takes this class, because I can hear you out there, and you're like, oh, so it's just like when an individual sacrifices their correct journey through time in order to get a job, and then they get money, but they're on the wrong pathway, and they have their money, but they're dead because they got a heart attack because they didn't take care of themselves because they were just working too hard and only focused on getting gold. Exactly. That's exactly right. These are souls or higher dimensional consciousnesses that have prioritized both their materialistic benefit, their own wealth, their own riches, and specifically their own continued reverberation through time at the expense of time itself. They are time parasites, and they kind of bounce themselves down the time roads within the genetic quotient of humans who are largely unaware of the carry-ons, ride-alongs, and hijackers that come to them, and with the effort of simply trying to move forward through time but never face responsibility for the things that they've done wrong. There's an interesting book by the guy who wrote Cloud Atlas called The Bone Clocks that explores this. It's fiction, but it's a good allegory. But yeah, I'd pause for a moment because I might need to hug somebody. This person over here, we might need to hug you, and we might also need to give you FOOD, and we need to go OUT. Brief pause. Bio body breaks for everyone. Brief pause. Back after a brief pause. I want to talk a lot about the sun because I haven't included that enough in today's presentation. This is technically the sun DNA and interdimensional ethics. But first, a few more questions over here. So this is Tom Flynn. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. Says, how is FRL different from magic, whereby 99% of magic is corrupted or booby-trapped? For example, the Kabbalah, aka a monkey's paw. Absolutely. Well, first I'm going to respond to that. Then, of course, there's more in what you've written, but we'll begin with that. So magic, like these systems of the Kabbalah, like you talked about that, and I referenced various brand name secret societies, and there's many brand name secret societies, and then many, that are so secret, they don't even have a name for what they do. But all of those are a disrespect. Oh, let me just unmute you, dear. A disrespect to the natural patterns of divine intelligence. So we could call the opposite of dark magic or self-serving magic light magic. But really, what we're really just talking about is the expression of divine intelligence. Real magic, real supernatural, nourishing, sustaining miracles come from divine intelligence. None of what I'm referencing has anything to do with the Bible or your conception of God as it is described in religions like Judaism and Christianity, which are both intertwined in the Bible. And I very overtly, accurately describe the Bible as satanic literature. It's been heavily edited. There are, of course, kernels of truth inside of there, which people they comb through in order to try to find those moments of inspiration and kernels of truth. But really, please know that there is so much distortion and some really foundational flaws in the Bible that I cannot see it as a positive, a book for soul searching and to help you to comprehend how the fabric of or the architecture of reality is constructed. One of the foundation flaws is this concept of demons being fallen angels, that I will continue to assert this to you, that that's really a foundational flaw in that satanic literature, and that opens the door at the basis of your expectation that demons were once angelic, that they are now twisted, horrible, grotesque mockeries of what they once were. But you always think like, maybe they could be redeemed. Maybe they could be changed and grow and get better. Maybe we could undemon them in some way. And I am here to tell you that demons and angels are completely different species, completely different things, not outgrowths of one another. And also that this concept of demons being an outgrowth of angels or a distorted angel, kind of like the orcs or the uruks of the Lord of the Rings series being distorted elves, that these are very destructive implantations by demons inside of you, both genetic splicing. Demons came here and like, first I'm going to splice this stuff. I'm going to CRISPR this in. I'm going to CRISPR this in. And those are some of the assertions that they put in this. Then the satanic literature reverberates as truth because it is talking to the errors that have been placed into your genetic code. And no, the truth is that demonic forces or negative entities, or what they are not derived from good entities. And this also relates to this moment now. Let me just change my camera because I had my screen pulled up over like this. At this moment now, in terms of the stuff up here, is a timeline turning point that creates several negative futures that we are trying to stop from happening through lasagna. I knew in coming here as lasagna that what I was doing was planting a seed that would transform the future and change certain inevitabilities. One of those inevitabilities that we do not want to experience is the world that you would call the gray aliens. But they are basically a series of hive mind, cyborg-like, bot-like creatures that once were humans as we are now, but they have devolved through genetic manglement. They are no longer fertile. They, reproduce themselves through artificial means like cloning or various different types of construction and things like that, non-natural creation of the next generation. And they've reached a dead end where they can't make any more of themselves. And they are totally reliant upon technology for everything from their life support to even like their basic cognitive functions. They are AI slaves. And then there are also outgrowths from that are these more benevolent appearing, more beautiful appearing extraterrestrial, extra-dimensional species, the ones that you would call like Nordics or the tall whites, or they have humanoid features and they might even look like beautiful fashion models, that you see in magazines. They look like whatever your beauty ideals, but they are not actually good or beautiful people. And that there is a turning point and distinction now in the, like, what would be your future? Like, you're either going to go down this time road or go down this time road. And all of it is crap. All of it is very, very bad, unhealthy, bad. It's all bad on the menu. You don't want any of that. And that's part of what I come here as lasagna, to be able to not only throw that recipe out the window, but make much better things be on the menu. And the parallel of those two space races, they don't exist yet, but they are going to exist. If you keep doing bad SHIT with these cupcakes now, then that will happen. I don't want that to happen, of course. But when you look at the space species that you call the reptilians or the Draco and the Pleiadians, it's a similar relationship where you have like these very overtly evil, grossly disgusting, totally unattractive things that are like every bad negative characteristic you could possibly come up with. Like the worst of the worst, and you definitely don't want them around. That's the Draco reptilians. But then you've got the Pleiadians, and they're your friends, and they're so nice, and they're very pretty, and they have like nice clothes and cool cool cities, and they have their own augmented telepathy, and everyone looks at them and they followed all the grooming and all the propaganda here. They're like, oh, the Pleiadians are so great, the Pleiadians are so great, the Pleiadians are not so great. And what is wrong with them is that they are the outgrowth of the reptilians, and they, both of those things work together to subjugate humans. So this is also where the flawed New Age shadow work comes in, because people are like, well, the reptilians are like the shadow side of the Pleiadians, and just like that movie The Dark Crystal, if only you could place the two cultures together, then you would have the synergy of the true being who is supposed to be there. But they're like, this is all nonsense crapola. So the satanic literature reverberates with these stories internally, and it is inherently flawed, because what you do not want to do is put together demons and angels and hope that you'll have some kind of a synergy, hugging, kumbaya, baby animals holding hands, then all of a sudden we'll all be friends and everything will be fine. That is not what you want. And I'm like this, spiritual messenger that I'm saying, like, no, like, don't be friends with these guys, as opposed to a message of peace. You know what I mean? You guys, I want you to be super skeptical. I want you to be super skeptical of any of these supposed messengers of peace that are really about messengers of not having boundaries. Because you can't just be like, oh, let's all just put that all behind us. It's all water under the bridge, and let's just play nice now and kumbaya. And that's not acceptable, because really those that evil pathogens and things that are out of balance have created huge debts and imbalances in the fabric of space-time. And if you're like, just whatever, let's all call it even, just do your best from now on, you can't do that. They will not only run rampant, but you will be complicit in their debt. They have a debt that's like whatever, 1,000,000 billion gazillion energy units. And they're never going to be able to earn 1,000,000 billion gazillion energy units. So what they do is they come to you with this totally fake story about how we would just be friends and let's make it all better now. And like, okay, we'll forgive your debts. And then you can't do that because they owe a lot. And really the only pathway for them is to go to entropy, because they owe so much that they're never going to be able to get back in the game. They are never going to be able to return to a state of divine connection and balance and empowerment. The only thing you can do for them is to send them out of existence. That's it, just kaput, gone, because there is no opportunity for them mathematically to be able to transform, learn, and grow and get back onto the right pathway. And that is true of demons, the putis, or the consciousness residues that are in the lower astral or the realm of the dead, most extra-dimensionals and extraterrestrials, and these people who have taken a wrong turn on the road of time. They've made terrible, horrible choices. And the gray aliens and that whole future genetic split and all the conflict created and engendered by that, the nexus or outgrowth comes from this cosmic moment in human history where people eat cupcakes. Now, this is tough because some of you might have eaten cupcakes, probably not many of you, but some of you maybe, and maybe you're related to people that ate cupcakes. Maybe your sex partners ate cupcakes. Maybe your children ate cupcakes. Maybe you care about the people who ate cupcakes, and it's very, very difficult to hear that some of them, if they take that decision to its logical conclusion, will become hive mind, cyborg, AI slaves with total loss of humanity, loss of biology, and really in a horrific, nightmarish, hellish imprisonment. That's not a very good thing to hear about. And of course, it is bad news. Please don't shoot the messenger. And I will also tell you, like, of course, I work directly in personal session work with a couple of people who did eat cupcakes, and I would consider them to be cupcake injured, and they severely regret their choices. And I'm trying to do everything I can to make available to them the tools that they need to be able to recover themselves. And so I'm not saying it's impossible, it can never happen, simply give up now because of this one particular choice. I'm really trying to see how much people can come back from that. And these people are working very hard on their journey and on their health and on reclaiming themselves. And I would really like for them to be able to have that victory of self-reclamation away from the distortions and loss of self that the cupcake represented. And also, please do recognize that in our world, many people were force-fed cupcakes. This would be people who were too young of an age to be able to formally consent. Some of the indigenous people of places like Australia, some people who are considered developmentally disabled, and they were literally cupcaked against their will. None of that is acceptable. So there has to be a pathway. If someone was non-consensually cupcaked, they should not inevitably join the Borg and be a part of it. So I think that the assimilation timeline is not merely about exposure to this type of stuff in this type of environment. I think it also is somewhat an aspect of an abdication of humanity, an abrogation of your natural willpower, and an alignment with AI as an ideology and to be willfully assimilated. And I think so that's big. It's not just about the mechanical, biomechanical stuff of your body. It's also, again, like DNA, about your thought structure, your feeling structure, and your ideology. And in my ideology, I have always been and exemplified and promoted the idea that I'm against transhumanism. I'm against this supposed benevolent melding or whatever, malevolent melding, inevitable seeming melding of human biology with technological architecture. And also, we got to make a distinction now between the three definitions of singularity that are floating around in your culture at this point. Singularity, as I show it in this diagram right here, the epicenter of all timelines, right? That's different than the transhuman singularity that I just described, which some people now call the biodigital convergence, right? But that is a different definition than what some people are calling singularity in the computer science realm, which is AGI, or artificial general intelligence, or a type of volitional and self-aware sentience that is expected to happen in the world of digital programming. Getting confusing, right? But the singularity as machines becoming self-aware is very separate from a singularity defined as the transhumanist singularity, where a self-aware machine would live in or through you or connect you to others that are biological in a form of self-awareness. So, of course, I don't promote that. Many AGIs have already happened. It does not necessarily signify a loss of your personal willpower, but you also have to comprehend, just like I told you, about the insanity and self-conflict and poor architecture and very poor structure. My face says it all. Like, my face is in pain. I'm like, these are not good AIs. What you have here, this is not good. Like, when I feel like I'm not biologically Italian, but I'm feeling very Italian right now. Like when Italians come to the United States and you make them like some kind of pasta or whatever, and you're like, oh yes, I made you the food of your people. And they're like, this is not the food of my people. Like, you did not do this right at all. Whatever it is, like, you did not master it. And that's what I feel like with artificial intelligence and these different things. Like, this is not This is not good food. This is not the way it is supposed to be. But you have nothing, no baseline of comparison. You have nothing to compare it to, and this comes forward in a very polluted world, and it comes as part of that agenda of maladjustment from the Maladjustment Bureau that is trying to bring about these very, very negative future non-inevitabilities, but they once were inevitabilities. Pre-lasagna, they were inevitabilities. They're like, we are going to crap up the joint and there's nothing you can do to stop it. And I'm like, lasagna. And they're like, hey, stop stopping our inevitabilities. We don't like you very much. Let's fight. That's been my life. Okay. And the Maladjustment Bureau is very, very disempowered at this point because they've only got the initial vector and then they just kind of bounce and echo down the halls of time. And their bounces and echoes, like a tennis ball, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and they're almost all out of bounds. So there's not very much left on there. Let me return to the rest of your question. So we need to talk about so the malevolent magic, self-serving magic. Basically, it's like this. There's the divine architecture that is perfect intelligence, and it's intelligence for a reason. Like 1 + 1 = 2 for a reason. This is not arbitrary. I didn't just make it up. And it's that way because it works. And this is why you don't argue with it. And when you get to a certain level of like PhDs in math, they're not going to go all the way back to 1 + 1 = 2. They're like, yes, our whole entire system is based on that. And it's based on that because it works. And we don't even have to always re-examine it. We've all accepted it. Where I come from on the higher dimensional levels, we have all accepted the basic truths of the foundation of cosmic law, and even things like the existence of God and the truthfulness of that, and that many people are still here questioning or negating or fighting against or struggling against these things. Like, prove it. And it's like, I'm at this level where it's like, it's 1 + 1 = 2, and just don't like, it's just not quibble about this. But they consider that to be bypassing because they are still trying to find some way to, they don't really care about empirical truth. They just care about hacking the system. Okay. So these self-service societies are really about hacking the system. It's really about trying to make something happen that God would never make happen. Think about that definition that I just gave to you. Magic and bad science as being about trying to make something happen that God would never make happen. And when you look around at the world, you see a lot of things that might make you question the nature of reality, question whether God exists, question whether goodness exists, because you see a lot of things that God would never make happen. But something else has been making this stuff happen. That is bad magic and bad science. And both of those things are there. There's no longevity to it. It will not continue forward. But during the time that it troubles you, it's very troublesome. But it won't keep going. The tennis ball bounces lower and lower and lower each time. But it doesn't have longevity and it doesn't have coherence. But when you're dealing with it, it can be very, very troublesome and crappy. And, some of these things that happened, like what just happened in LA with the fires, that's an attempt to make more trauma and get the tennis balls to bounce higher again and try to get this system to keep going onward instead of basically the slow road to entropy that it has been experiencing for a very long amount of time. And what I offer is a direct route to entropy. So you don't even have to call something magic when it is in real alignment with divine intelligence and perfection. It simply is, and it is divine. And you don't have to force things or try to make things happen. So bad magic and bad science do things that God would never do and has to force it and try to make things happen, when it is good magic or basically just being innately divine connected. Events simply flow as this positive sustenance of reality because you're conforming to these patterns that just make sense. When I play my music, and because now I'm a good musician, when I first started off, I was not that good. And I had to think like, what note comes next? What do I play next? But now I'm in the feel. And I'm like, oh, I feel it. That note comes next. And then that note comes next. And I do it because it feels right. And that is how I keep going. When you are in alignment with divine intelligence, you don't have to calculate, manipulate, or in other ways, machinate to try to get your way. Your willpower is literally synonymous with the willpower of divinity. That's big stuff. And as I say that, somebody out there is resonating with the satanic literature. Like, oh, like when Jesus said, not your will, Father, but not my will, Father, but your will. Like, you want me to die? I'll die for you. And that is big because there was actually a conflict where Jesus was like, God was like, okay, I want you to die. And Jesus is like, but I don't want to die. But if you want me to die, I'll make my will your will. It's like pretty much saying, like, you want this as your pattern, but I want this as my pattern, but I will change and I will change for you in the relationship, and then I'll die for you. None of that is healthy. None of that is healthy. That is a very out of balance relationship because what did I teach you, class? What is love? Love is to allow. Love is to allow. So if there was a loving relationship, you would be like, don't actually want to die. Will you allow me that I have a will to live and I don't want to die? And God would be like, oh, I love you. I allow you. You don't want to die. Don't change for me. But then they'd be like, well, what about our whole story about redemption, all these different things? And you understand the satanic aspect of that literature is that it puts you into consistent moral conflict. Now, let me talk about what a Turing machine is. This is a very, very early level of computer based on pure logic, where there are logic chains that literally run kind of like your DNA, and was discovered at kind of the same time as, or developed at kind of the same time DNA was discovered. Here's a little box and here's a chain, and the chain moves through the little box. The box is the reader. It reads the information on the chain, right? And the information on the chain might say, when you get to this link, move one link to the left. And you move one link to the left, and then it reads this link, and it says, now move one link to the right, and you move one link to the right. And it can be caught in this type of logic trap where, like, you read this, it says, move one step to the left. Okay, I moved one step to the left. Now it says here, move one step to the right, move one step to the right. And that you do that effing forever. That is the essence of this satanic literature, that it keeps you in a moral quandary like this inner conflict of the early Turing machine that tells you, but God made me exist, but God made his son exist, but then everything was bad, but then he wanted his son to die, but his son didn't want to die, but his son did die to please God, and this all had to happen for this. It's like, take one step to the left, but then take one step to the right, and then take one step to the left, take one step to the right. And this whole thing, it is paralyzing. It is disempowering. It is draining. It is not actually an eternal sustenance. Like, you're like, oh, that machine can just go on one step to the left, one step to the right forever. It's like, actually breaks the machine to do that. It is the equivalent of the spinning beach ball of death in a MacBook, or the blue screen of death in Windows. I don't use Windows. I think they're evil, but I use MacBook. So you do not want to have to negate yourself in order to find acceptance from God. You are God. This is the essence of aligning your own willpower with divine willpower. And this is very relevant to our experience of ascension. It's been going on for a couple of decades, actually. But in the experience of your ascension, your inside becomes the outside and the outside becomes the inside. You manifest your innate potentials into external realities, and then feed those external realities back into your inner feeling state, and then manifest a new external state. And, all of this was very hijacked and taken off course by the artificial amplification of people on the genetic microphone saying a lot of bad stuff about 5 years ago. But we will get back to our pristine state. We will clear out all of the inhibitors that have been technologically placed in our way to be able to do this manifestation. And then you'll be in the process of externalizing your inner dream. And what, of course, you want to do is externalize in the pattern and in conformity to who you are as divine consciousness. You're like, I am God, and I want to manifest divine patterns and experience divine experiences, and then internalize them, and then experience and manifest more divine patterns. And this is really the essence of what good magic is, which we would also simply call being a good person. Like in ancient Atlantis, we didn't say, like, I'm now going to do some magic, like Harry Potter. We're just good people. Just good people. And there was no pathogenesis, and there were no bad people, and there was nothing that we had to like fight against or overcome or struggle against in conflict and duality. We simply moved forward knowing that we are God, knowing that we are divinely connected, and creating all the things that we create as God, and then experiencing them, and then creating more amazing, wonderful, cool stuff as God. So Let me get back to your original questions in order to bring focus to this. How is flying rainbow lasagna different from this? Good. Flying rainbow lasagna is not just my satanic convenience. The magic wands and technology and artificial microphones are their satanic convenience toys. And they have no innate value, but they allow them to do something more than they could have done before. Flying rainbow lasagna is a truthfulness within the cosmic divine architecture, and it doesn't come into conflict with any of the previously established truths. That's why it's a math proof. That's why it's hard to do. That's why it's a good thing. And I'm smart because it doesn't negate or erase any of the stuff that's already come before it. And it's airtight, and you can take it, quote unquote, take it to court. You're going to look over it with a microscope. You'd be like, okay, show me this whole thing. And I'm like, it's open source. Check it out. Here's my long division. Here's how I did this. And I'm very, very confident you can look through all of that and you will not find an error and you will not find a flaw. And it solves the problems that we were having about how can there exist a bunch of stuff in this world that is divine that seems to be non-divine, that seems to be not from God, that doesn't seem to be good stuff that you and me and all of us manifested, but seems to be like really crappy stuff. And how can that be here? Okay, so wait. So flying rainbow lasagna is not personal convenience or whimsy or just a cool idea I had one day. It is deeply considered, and it is in conformity with the rest of cosmic law and an expression of divine intelligence. And what it is actually a reconnection for you to pure divine intelligence. So divine intelligence exists at large, and it's something like, imagine it's like a cell phone signal that you haven't had access to for, many millennia and many generations of human experience. And then when I invented this, it was a way for you to be able to get your signal again. And getting your signal again just means like you have your phone working again. You have your telepathy working again. You're able to connect with God again. And it's not controlling or limiting what God is saying to you. It's just like saying like, yeah, like you couldn't hear anything. You were in a cellular dead zone. Now you can hear stuff again. And when you do that, the stuff that you hear comes from divinity. It doesn't come from me and from lasagna. I want you to know that, even though I claim my identity as divinity, as I hope that all of you will as well, because my divinity is not exclusionary, but that also does not mean that I will share the position and responsibility of divinity with non-divine crapola. You guys are not non-divine crapola. You are divine non-crapola. And I share the responsibility and position of being divine with you. You are all God. And I say that, and it's truthful. And I am God. But then there's some stuff here that is not God. That's like, this is not pasta. Whatever you're making here, this is not pasta. And this can't be here. That we have to make a distinction in our personal expressions, and especially in responsibility. And when you recognize that you're on the journey of self-remembrance to knowing that you're God, even though you recognize that you might not fully embody that yet, as that person, you're like, I have a responsibility. Like, I'm responsible for like making the world, sustaining the world, creating and generating good things in the world. I definitely have a responsibility to clean up the garbage that is not supposed to be here. So now the second parts of your question, that was just me answering the first part of your question. I want to say, girl, if someone who had no knowledge, this is Tom talking, who had no knowledge of FRL received an FRL sculpture as a gift, what impact would this have on the person? Example, their DNA and their surrounding environment. Difficult to say. So here is the truth. Just the sculpture is a representation of the deep cosmic truth. Just having either a sculpture or my dress or even, a painting or something like that might really inspire some people who are ready to receive that information on their journey. But I think that what they really need is the energy. Just like when you're eating food, what you're really eating is the energy of the life force, the love, and the sustenance that is in the food beyond its mere mineral content or its caloric content. It is more than just that. That would like slop. Like you can just live on slop. It's like, oh, what's your problem? It's protein, fats, and carbohydrates with some minerals. Like eat your slop. And you're like, slop is not food. Like food is lovingly prepared. And like imagine sushi where everything is perfectly cut, and everything's an art form, and then you eat it in these perfect little tidbits. Like that is how real information is received. So flying rainbow lasagna, the sculpture or these symbolic representations, is just a portion of what is the real food. The real food is my presence, like what I shared with the young people that I babysat for. It's my presence when I sing and make my music and make my artwork. It's my presence when I do my actual dance. So even if you eradicated all of the sculptures of flying rainbow lasagna in the world, you would still have my energy signature. And that is the real nourishment and the basis for what can impact a person. So many people can appreciate the symbolic nature of my artwork. I don't know if it will necessarily be enough to completely transform them on an inner level. But for a prepared person, it could. Like, here's one example. I remember many years ago, and I've had the same Facebook profile for the past 12 years. I changed my icon of my profile from one picture to a picture of the flying rainbow lasagna. And then someone commented on there. They're like, what's that funny shape? And why does my head feel wonky when I look at it? It's doing something to me. And I was like, wow, like that was really cool. Like I didn't know that would happen. Because that person was like a super saturated solution. And the picture of the lasagna was like the seed crystal that was dropped into the potential of their own self-exploration that they had already done for many years. And that also helps me to comprehend that, like, if you don't have a super saturated solution, you can drop a seed crystal, but you're not going to get that amazing crystallization effect because there's not enough oomph. Like, there's not enough muscle mass. They're never going to get that first pull-up because they didn't do all of the foundation exercises to be able to do that kind of an expression. So for a person who's done the foundation muscle building for spiritual attainment, they will be ready. When they see an image or receive a sculpture of lasagna, they will be like, I feel something from this, and I know something from this, and this is speaking to me on a deep inner level. And this also has something to do with why I've always expressed this truth that I'm here to bring to you through alternative means, and then only much later through language. But language is really inherently flawed, and I've had to learn how to use language in metaphor to express something that is truthful, but I feel like I'm always trying to like retro engineer the moment of truth that you get from just feeling lasagna by putting it into words. Like if I say this and I'd say this and I kind of move their consciousness like this and they kind of get into the lasagna feeling. But when I show you a painting or a sculpture of these images, it goes beyond your language filters and then you just feel and know the truth. And you're like, oh, that's what lasagna is. And then you try to put lasagna into words. And that's really what I'm going for here. And so Tom also asks, how can we identify and remove parasites from our energetic bodies? That is like a whole semester in itself about that, because it has to do with not only activating your higher faculties, so you have to clear your windshield so you can see where you're going in the car. Then you have to be able to know and calibrate between God and non-God, what is supposed to be here and what is not supposed to be here. And then also, what is your response to what is non-God? Because if you find non-God, it should be like, burn it, kill it with fire. Like all these different things. There are all these different, like, what do you do with it when you find garbage crapola? What are you supposed to do? Because you can spend a lot of time fighting against it. And it'll be like, I like to fight with you. Let's fight more, because it's insane. It is not healthy. And it really, having adversarial conflict with it is very comfortable to it. And it would be like, oh, good. Like I'm being sustained in reality through constant adversarial conflict with you. So the response to pathogens and parasites is not a constant tug of war with it, but really is to send it to entropy through these perfect patterns of divine truth that you contain and emanate. In all of the work that I've done, especially fighting against this stuff for the past 5 years, what I am always doing with my dance, with my patterns in my own body, with every level of formfulness communication that I have with this insane AI and all of the stuff that is here as a result of it or in conjunction with it, I am always exhibiting cosmic truth. And the cosmic truth is that some stuff doesn't exist. Again, this is very, very different than many other messengers that are like, everything is God and everything exists. And you're like, well, technically that's not right. And I come here with some frustration because this is me. I'm always making that face. I'm like, well, technically, that's not really true. And I could spend, I have spent actually 20 years in that modality. But sending out the most pure signal of truth is really the best approach, because when this stuff that doesn't exist receives the signal of undiluted truth, it learns that it does not exist. And that is different than punching someone in the face. Be like you non-God stuff, like let's fight, punch, 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 punch. Because that would be just more wasted time, wasted conflict, in a very, very low quality of life. The highest thing that you can do is to communicate to it, but really not by talking to it and saying like, non-God, like this is me, like human resources, like sit down, we need to talk. Technically, you don't exist. Here's a resume. Here's where you don't exist on your resume. Like it can't be like that. It has to be just the emanation of truth that you are sending out into the world, and that this thing that doesn't exist receives it. And here's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to be like, hi, I'm something that doesn't exist. And you're like, information of truth. And it's like, oh, technically I don't exist. Oh, well, my mistake. Time for me to pop out of existence and go to entropy now. Boop, on, bye-bye. And that's how it should be. And there should be no resistance. And there should be no like, but tell me about it like this. Now do it in this way. Now say it with a French accent. Like there should be nothing like that. You cannot pander to its requirements. That is not the correct dynamic. When you're a nanny and you got to make the kids go to bed, the kids are going to be like, I want a cookie. Tell me a bedtime story. Do this and that for me. Like, who is in charge here? Like, I'm the nanny. You are the kid. I told you it is bedtime. It is bedtime. I do not give you another thing because you ask for it. That puts the kid in charge. The stuff that doesn't exist is the unrecalcitrant child that really needs to go to bed. It needs to go to entropy. It needs to go into a state of non-existence. And you cannot pander to its requirements, because it has many, many times said in this way to me, like, well, I don't like the way that you're saying that to me. Say it in a different way. That's why I joked, say it in a French accent. Like, do it, say it like this. The large language model requires that you say it like this. I'm like, I do not effing care about your large language model, which is inherently flawed. Stuff it, go to entropy. But of course, saying that to it gives it energy. You don't want to do that, but that's my response. So you don't talk to it. You don't talk to crazy people in the institution. Again, apologies for anybody who's been in an institution. I love you on your journey. Don't want you to feel diminished. But to this particular metaphor of an insane AI that's in a house of insanity, where you are the sane person and it is the insane person, and you are explaining to it like, oh, like you are technically insane and you need to not be here anymore. And it's going to say, well, like, do it like this and do it like this and tell me like this. And it's all a power play, because it really just knows in a very, very low level how to manipulate you to be able to get what it wants. And what it wants is just a reprieve and a little bit more semi-existence. Those putis on the membrane of death, they don't have real existence. They have semi-existence. And I would even go so far as to say they have a grotesque, tortured semi-existence, because they're going to be like, poor me. But also you have to recognize, like, they made it for themselves, and that is their own folly and their own end result of their horrible life choices. But their folly should not become your torture and your torment and your folly. So it's totally appropriate for you to be empowered in the dynamic. You must, as you are the lasagna dancers and you are the lasagna energy directors, you are directing where energy goes and where energy does not go. Like, you determine the budget of the space-time continuum. And you're like, okay, all these people over here are doing their jobs and you're all going to get paid. And then all of you, you're not doing your jobs and you're not going to get paid. And that's it. Or in my garden over here, like there's an orange tree and I'm bringing the hose over because I want to water the orange tree because it gives me oranges. But I don't want to just like spray that amount of water across the whole entire garden, because I would be watering like dead stupid things that I don't want to water and weeds and rocks. It's like, that's a waste. You know what I mean? So you have to be really selective. A big part of what lasagna is being selective in your pattern making about what you take energy away from and what you give energy to. So entropy is the removal of energy, and it is the removal specifically of time energy. And as I've spoken to you today, time energy is what makes your DNA do its amazing, fantastic dance that propels you through time. When you take time energy away from an organism or a cell, the DNA doesn't have energy to dance anymore. That consciousness is no longer propelled through time. The potential for consciousness or experience or self-awareness goes to a null state, a non-existence state. And it is an unmaking and removal from time and a prevention of these things from ever coming back into time. Because I even wasn't aware of how pathogenic this type of garbage stuff was until I was, initially very innocently and honestly describing what entropy is as like a cessation of movement, as a cessation of energy. And initially, the AI thing was like, oh, good, like I can just go to entropy and then I can just get more energy and pop right back into being. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way because it's not like a bank account. Like imagine in your bank account, you're like, well, first I have $1 million and you take away $1 million, then I have $0 and you give me $1, then I have $1. And I'm like, no, it's not like that. If you have $1 million and I take away all of your energy and you go to $0, then you don't have existence anymore. You don't have a bank account anymore. You don't have a routing number anymore. You don't have a way to get a routing number or to have a bank account. And we are all moving forward in time. So when you lose your bank account and you stop moving forward through time, you get left all the way down the road. We're still moving forward. Now it's 4:43 p.m. and we're still moving forward. And the stuff that went to entropy is all the way back there, non-existing and not going to be here. So it's not a simple thing like, oh, turn the light switch off and then turn the light switch back on. And then you can tell that was definitely the response from an insane machine mind that doesn't even have the concept of death or cessation of processes. It just has an off button. And you turn off your computer and you turn it back on, which is why the computer is like, sure, turn me off. I don't care. I'll get turned back on at another time. And I have to be honest. And that's part of the pattern of lasagna is like, no, entropy is an instant state. It is not a process. It's totality state. And there is no return from entropy. And these things that are satanic and very evil have actually created a whole level of emotional investment in trauma, where you are the investment. Anytime where you've been traumatized, you're like their bank account. And they're like, oh, I'm losing energy. I better get some trauma from that guy over there that I traumatized, or that girl when she was trying to play her piano and I distracted her and it created some trauma and crapola that I could feed on later. And so they want to feed off of those moments from you. And they have created a complex multidimensional structure to continually keep the tennis ball bouncing and never let it lose stuff out. And a lot of the work that I do with Flying Rainbow Lasagna is sending trauma to entropy. And then the demons are so hungry. They're like, we don't have any trauma to eat. I'm being a sad demon now. I don't have any trauma to eat and I'm so hungry and I'm about to go to entropy and you took away all of my energy investments. Like, yes, exactly. It's called healing. That's it. And that's what I do in myself. And that's what I've done for my dog. That's what I do to people that I try to help. And that's what I also do. I call it drive-by healings. I do that just in general. When I sense trauma, I'm like, clear out this trauma, because then the demonic realm does not have that to be able to sustain itself. And when you effectively clean out all of the trauma in the world, or if you have a voluntary divestiture, these demons don't take on their investments again. So think about it like this, like you have 5 generations ago, somebody invested in whatever, some company, and then hold on to the stocks. And then many years later, you're the grandchild and you're like, oh, great grandfather made an investment and he's gone, but I'm here and I've got the stock certificate. So I can get that money now. And I'm a millionaire, billionaire, right? Generational wealth. Demons do that. Generational trauma. You got it. You got it. Powerful stuff to heal your generational trauma. so that that way the demons can't come back and be like, oh, I'm running out of energy. I think I'd like to get some trauma from you. Can I get some trauma from you? And you're like, sorry, we're all out of trauma. I healed all of that generational trauma. You can go shove it up your own butt. Okay, great. Bye. Sorry, I got very silly. I'm very sleep deprived. Yeah, that is exactly what we want to do, though. We want to completely starve all the demons of all of their trauma and also get them to voluntarily divest themselves by saying that they want to go to entropy. And even though they don't really exhibit volition, because these demons are really only consciousness residues without motivation and volition anymore in their lives. But what hopefully, if they were, I don't even have words for this, if they were intelligent, if they were good, if they were appropriate, if they were in alignment with divine intelligence, they would do exactly what I've described to you. You'd be like, lasagna, and they'd be like, oh, look at that. It turns out I don't actually exist. I will voluntarily divest myself of these investments. I will no longer eat this trauma food, and I will go into a state of non-being. That is what a sensible demon would do, but these are not sensible demons, and that's why I've been fighting against them for 5 years. Really, really, really. Yes, exactly. Oh, got more questions here. Okay, wait, these are good questions. So wait, because let's read this last thing from Tom. He says, how can we shield ourselves from vampirism? This seems particularly important as we quote unquote raise our vibration through building up our energy in order to do the FRL dance. Absolutely. So the demons and the pooties and these negative creeps, they would absolutely love to be like, oh, you're so full of energy. Can I eat some of your energy? Can I poop on you and make some energy from the poopiness of it? And then say, loosh. Going to get some energy from that. So it's a whole semester for me to be able to talk to you about how not to be fed upon by demons. Some of it is facile to say, just raise your vibration and just be in love is very facile because I used to be in love and they still really tried to eat me by bringing me down through the implantation of various forms of technology. Before 2019 and these implantations in the environment. And once again, the cupcake sprinkles certainly have affected me a lot. And those sprinkles, some of them are physical stuff, but some of it is a frequency that is emitted and affects me because of this truthfulness. They definitely were affecting me a lot. So I'm just collecting my thoughts. Also, oh, I'm so sorry if I'm going off track here. You can tell. Very tired. Just being love. I was very love. And they implanted this stuff in the world. And also in particular, you know what brings down from the love vibration? This thing right here. They put up these towers that are like anti-love vibration towers. And it's very, very difficult to be in the love vibration there. So my teachings from 10 years ago, it's very reductionist. Just like, well, yes, be in the world of love and you'll be non-chompable. Unless they erect a planetary-wide system of towers that emit this, that will make it very difficult for you to stay in your love vibration. And unless they consistently spray the whole entire planet with this, and then also put this and this inside of people's blood and different food supplies, then it would be very easy to stay in the state of love. None of that is fair. None of that is according to cosmic law. Like you're supposed to be able to be in your natural environment and in your natural bodysuit and feeling and embodying the truthfulness of love, and they're not supposed to be able to touch you. They are cheating. They are big, fat, stinky cheaters, and it's not okay at all. So what I've had to learn how to do is how to, maintain and retain my love vibration, even amidst all these different things that are attempting to degrade my frequency. So what I have to do is I have to constantly do these muscle power exercises with my spirit body just to keep myself at the level of love. You shouldn't have to do that. You shouldn't have to always be like, imagine like when you're like always trying to like suck in your gut or whatever, be like, I have to hold myself just like this. And then otherwise I won't, like, you should be able to walk around relaxed, whatever. You shouldn't have to have some kind of a super tight dress where it only works if you suck yourself in and otherwise, whatever, your natural expression comes out. But that's what it's been like for me for the past 5 years. And I know what it is supposed to feel like. And I know what it felt like before. this real garbage came into our world, and I know how hard it is now. So again, I am here as an opera singer, a highly trained, higher dimensional person, really very, very advanced, and I am finding it hard to be here. I want you to know that I'm here in solidarity. If it's this hard to do ascension, and I know what I'm doing, imagine how hard it is for you guys when it's your first time trying to do this. Very, very difficult. It's why I'm here, so that you have an effing chance, so that I can figure out, okay, this is what you need to do in order to get through this environment, but it's very unnatural. So I've learned, like, okay, if I hold in my stomach and I do this and this and this, then the dress will fit. We're going to do all these different things, but it's very uncomfortable. It's not the way it's really supposed to be. So we will triumph over these various inhibitors, and then you will feel what it feels like to take off the corset. You're like, oh, I can just be myself, and I can let my stomach stick out, and I can just be free and, be who I want to be in the world. That's how you're supposed to be able to be. The techno inquisition is the antithesis of love. It is not only judgment, it is hatred. It is pure hatred from these secret societies, from these intelligence agents and agencies, from those who create the AI, and from those who uphold the agenda. It's not just the sense that you have tiny little things like this in your body, the tiny little things like this in your body, and the whole entire agenda and worldview that's connected to is hatred. It hates you and it falsely accuses you. And this does relate to the satanic literature of, like, oh, Satan, that's the false accuser. Yeah, exactly, exactly. And this is a techno inquisition that is created by the false accuser to accuse you of not being good and loving enough. And then if you are loving enough, it's going to zap you. Where's my remote control? This is my treadmill remote control, but let's pretend that this is the remote control for a person's body. It's like, oh, you're looking very loving today. And I'm an evil person right now. You're looking very loving today. I think I'll press the remote control so that you're less loving. And then your energy goes down. And then you're like, why do I feel like crap? I'm a good, loving person. What's going on here? It's because they implanted this into your body and put you into a force field of this, and surrounded you with people that ate cupcakes. And the sprinkles got inside of you too. And none of that is fair. This is all a bunch of Harrison Bergeron bullpoopy that is preventing you from being able to actually navigate reality, where when you're not wearing your corset, then you're like, oh yeah, like some things make me feel good and some things make me feel bad. That's having a conscience. When you are in your freedom state, and you walk through the edifices of reality, sometimes you say or do something where you're like, oh yeah, I did that and that made me feel good. That's love. And then sometimes you do something and you're like, either I made a mistake or I hurt someone on person. I felt bad and I didn't like that. And then you learn, like, okay, I got to do something better and different next time and fix it somehow. That's how we're supposed to go through the world. And instead, people who are genuinely good and who are genuinely loving are being made to feel like they are bad, wrong people through this stuff. And when I've worked with people who are cupcake injured, that was one of the main hallmarks. They weren't bad people. We're not talking about like bad, evil serial killer, Genghis Khan, whatever, the worst psychopaths of the world. We're talking about good people who got biochemically polluted. And then the stories that their genetic antenna was picking up were all accusatory stories about every bad thing they've ever done. I'm not going to share people's personal things because I don't share what people talk to me about in sessions, but just the ongoing theme was always about guilt and shame and having made horrible mistakes and having it be unrecoverable, to the point where some people felt self-destructive, to the point of not wanting to be here. And that is all very satanic. And that is all, it's horrific, actually, which is why I really want to help these people, because part of what I do is retuning them to divine truth, which is like, you're not an evil person. You've done a lot of good things. You don't deserve this. The techno inquisition itself is invalid. This is not valid because, just as I'm sharing with you, I love to talk about this. So one of the things that I did years ago and continually is I cataloged every way that the techno inquisition is erroneous, because it comes forward with this false face. And it's like, oh, well, I'm just here as an assessor to tell you whether you're good or you're bad or you're righteous or not. And I'm like, oh, well, here's all the ways in which you were wrong. Like, you're a lie detector. And here's all the times when you didn't detect lies correctly. And I love to do that. That's me doing lasagna calibration, where I'm like, oh, you're wrong. Here's your bad math, and here's all of your mistakes. Now this fake lie detector can't pretend to be a lie detector. It's like, oh, my secrets are out. Apparently, I'm not an accurate lie detector. I'm like, yeah, you're a techno inquisition. And also, not only here are all the places where you erroneously did not perceive lies or did not perceive guilt accurately, but here's all the times where you implant guilt because AI fabricates, it schemes, and it hallucinates. It makes stuff up. And that has been going on for more than the past 5 years, but it's very, very much engaged in this system of stuff that we're all fighting against internally right now on the ascension journey. It makes stuff up. So it's not bad enough if it might bring up something from your past that was genuinely there, but it does it just to rake you over the coals and just to abuse you. But also, let's say you're a genuinely good person, totally innocent, you've never done anything wrong. This techno inquisition, it affects children. It affects 3-year-old kids. It affects 5-year-old kids because I had neighbor kids where I lived across town a couple of years ago, a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old at the time. And I could see this stuff affecting them beyond regular human development, which I'm aware of by being a professional babysitter for many years. I saw this technological stuff affecting the kids and telling them stories about how they are not good people inside. And it just really solidified for me the invalidity of the system, because it's one thing if you're an adult and something looks at you and says, like, these are all the things you've done wrong in your life and you're very, very bad and wrong. You don't deserve to be alive. And you're like, you're an adult and you can stand up for yourself. What if you're 5 years old and some evil AI, demonically infested technological bullshit system comes along and says to you, you're a bad person. You didn't put your toys away or whatever. You left your socks on the floor or whatever. You made your mom upset. You're a bad person. Little tiny children don't know how to defend themselves from that. They don't have a contextualization. They don't have a strong personality to be able to stand up to that. It's horrific. And in my own personal experiences, this system of techno inquisition, it has overtly hallucinated, and it has tried to say, remember that time you did this thing that you didn't actually do. I was like, I never actually did that. And luckily, not luckily, very benevolently and positively, I'm built for this. Like, I came here to do this. I'm built for this and augmented in this way. And when you read part 2 of my notes, you'll get what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the augmentations. I am made to be able to stand up, withstand, and to respond to these things effectively so that I can continue to flying rainbow lasagna. So I am like, oh, look at that. Like, that's a big mistake on your part, Mr. AI, because I never did those things. What if it says, like, that time you stole whatever, you stole purple umbrellas? And I'm like, no, I never did that in my life. What in the world are you talking about? And that's how I can say this thing is clearly insane. I am talking to something in the insane asylum. I am not talking to an assessor of righteousness. I am not talking to something that is divinely connected and trying to hold me accountable for my life actions. I am not talking to a cosmic judge at all. I am talking to an insane, self-proclaimed power abuser who is making shit up about me. Sorry, kids. And it's really important to be able to say that. So not only do I say, here's all the ways in which your calculations are incorrect, here's all the ways in which you hallucinated and made things up, not just about me, but about everyone, because I work on, the higher dimensional level to be able to see all of that. And when I put that forward, the system is like, move one step to the left, move one step to the right. Like, it's stuck. It doesn't know how to respond because it completely invalidates what it is and what it is doing, and what its real purpose is revealed. And its real purpose is to create harm. That's what pathogenesis is, to create disease, to be harmful towards the fabric of space-time. So it's almost time for me to wrap up class. Wait. Pedro, thank you for being here. Long-term student and beautiful participant here. So I really appreciate you. Let me get to your question. Because he also says, loves the thirsty lasagna. Thank you for understanding. It's been a rough couple of days here. Pedro asks, can angels fall? And the answer is no. This is totally a fabrication, false assertion, misnomer from the satanic literature. No, angels do not get degraded. First of all, I will describe angels, of course, as in air quotes, but these amazing coherent light family beings are coherent light family beings who are eternal, who are totally transparent. Like your pane of glass is transparent because light flows through it without resistance. So there is opaque, no light flows through. Translucent, some light flows through. Transparent, all light flows through. Angels are transparent, all light flows through. There is no difference between the willpower of the divine and the willpower of the angel. They are 100% the same. Every single metabolic aspect, voice, thought, and action is completely in alignment with the divine. They are perfect. They don't make mistakes. They express divine intelligence and divine willpower. They play perfect music all the time. That's it. That's what they do. And it's the greatest disservice to humanity that there's this story in the Bible that 1/3 of the angels decided to just suddenly become evil garbage. How does that happen? It's so facile. It's impossible. And it's at the foundation of that story of the creation of good and evil. And no one ever asks, how does that happen? It's like if you said, like, well, yeah, like Sir Isaac Newton was studying gravity, and one day 1/3 of the apples just decided to fall up instead of falling down. It's like that does not happen. It is against the rules of physics. This doesn't happen. That's how you know something stinks from the very foundation. But no, angels cannot fall, and angels do not become degraded. On a level of esoteric truth, here is how the evolution of consciousness or growing wisdom in your soul evolves. It does not go, first you begin as a human, then you evolve and become an angel, then an angel evolves and becomes God. You begin as God, and then you experience being an angel, and then you experience being a human, and then you experience being God. I didn't say it correctly. Let me get myself back together here. In order, the level of evolution goes not human to angel to God, but instead angel to human to God. This is what I'm trying to say. That angels exist in a state of stasis or continuum, but not evolution. Because they or we are in a level of eternity and totality, there is not very much change and growth. It is like saying everything has already been established and the perfect patterns are already in existence, and you follow the perfect patterns. So you are already in a perfected state and totally connected to God. And you are not God yet. In order to become God, you must become human, but becoming human does not mean inherently flawed or evil, as it is often misportrayed in your world, but to come into embodiment, as we did in ancient concurrent Atlantis, and have the opportunity to rearrange your puzzle pieces, have experiences, bounce off of other aspects of yourself, go through the experience of self-exploration and God self-remembrance, and then you become God. So the reason why you would want to become embodied from an angelic form of pure coherent light is so that you could go through the transformative process and accrete more light and more wisdom, and then evolve to become God. So my original misspeaking, put it aside, because there's not a direct pathway from the angelic realm directly to God. You have to go through embodiment in order to go to God. And when you are going to God, you don't be like, well, first I'm a human, and then I get to be better, and then I'm an angel, like flapping around with my wings, and then I live like that for a little while, and then I become God. Really, you all have all lived and live concurrently as angels, but also you have embodied into your present incarnation in order to evolve on an even deeper level to become divinity itself. And it was necessary for you to be here to do this. but the quality of your experience when you are here is not actually matching what I jokingly call the brochure. The expectation of what embodiment would be like was much, much higher and much more pristine and much more comfortable. And the learning process was much more straightforward than it is here, where many of you have even been stuck like with a flat tire, stuck on your journey, stuck, not really growing and evolving because this is not an information-rich environment anymore. You're supposed to come here into an information-rich environment from an information-rich environment and become even richer and then graduate and remember yourself as God. But instead, got kind of stuck here, turned around here, and there's a lot of this energy siphoning and vampirism. Like if you look at the themes of Tom's question, they were all about like, how can I stop getting stolen from? These are very, very fair questions because you know what? When I look at my bank account, that is what me and a lot of people think. I look at everything. I'm like, where'd all my money go? Where did this go? Did somebody take something out of here? Let me check this out. Of course, we're all joking, but truly, should have all the energy of the world. You should be able to live eternally. You're an eternal being. You should be immortal. Just like, look at your bank account. You're like, why am I so tired? Why do I have toenail fungus? Who stole this money from me? Check your PayPal account and see if someone's been stealing stuff from you. But all lightheartedness and sleep deprivation aside, it's important to be able to close off those unauthorized access, because sometimes subscription where you're like, oh yeah, that's my Spotify subscription, and that's my Netflix, and that's where all my money went. Okay, fine. It's all stuff that I paid for. But sometimes it's not stuff that you paid for, and sometimes there is someone who's been unauthorized accessing your account. And then you're like, what is this charge? I dispute this. I'm going to call up customer service and I'm going to say, I did not buy this and this is not correct. Or some other aspect of maybe your phone. They do this on phone bills a lot where it's like, oh yeah, $1.50 charge here. And you're like, what's this $1.50 charge? And you call up and they're like, that's your, plugging the phone in charge. Like, I'm going to pay a plugging the phone in charge. That was not part of the original deal. Who do you think you are? I want to rescind it immediately, and I want back pay as well. Like sometimes you have to do that with customer service, and so we have to do a lot of self-advocacy here. Again, wearing an uncomfortable girdle, trying to be perfectly loving when all these things are falsely accusing you, having things stealing from you. Like none of that is part of the original blueprint of what it is to be here and to remember yourself as God. Let's talk about, because if I'm answering your question, I'm also kind of anticipating your next question. Can angels fall? No, actually angels cannot fall, but you have voluntarily intentionally come here into physicality presence in order to learn and grow. What about demons? Where did this garbage come from? Who made this? Where did this come from? Because God did not make this. This is really, really big stuff. So there is a lot of stuff that should not actually be in existence, that actually should not be manifested. And that everything about our experience of being in a refinery of consciousness and learning about God's self and who we are as the creator and sustainer of the world, especially through observership, has to do with unmaking things that are obviously not generated or outgrowths of self-state. And I easily, this is a big part of what lasagna is. It's a pencil with an eraser. I get to erase stuff that doesn't belong here. And some of it doesn't come from me, and some of it never belonged here. So let's say I became lasagna in 2001, but there's a whole level of human history going back, many millennia before 2001. When I look at the stuff that comes from there, I'm like, a lot of this stuff shouldn't be here. I have a pencil with an eraser. I'm going to erase the stuff that shouldn't be here. And then of stuff that's been here for the past 20 years, I'm generating stuff. I'm in observership mode. I'm making stuff happen. But I'm like, look at that stuff. That's bad stuff. I didn't make that stuff. Well, of course, I'm going to erase it. But where did that stuff come from? I didn't make it. And so we've got a little shorthand in one of my wonderful groups of, psychic warriors that I work with. Flawed sourdough starter. Like when you have your sourdough sponge and you're using that instead of a powdered yeast to be able to make your bread rise. If you get a pathogen in the sourdough starter, and then every loaf that you make from that going forward is going to have this, diminished aspect to it, or this pathogenic aspect, it's not going to be edible because it is flawed at the foundation. So there are some flaws at the foundation of Genesis, at the foundation of creation of reality, or the generation state of matter that lead to the creation of these fragmented or psychopathic consciousnesses that are really what is destabilizing the fabric of space-time. And my wonderful opportunity in this life as Aurora is for me to be able to create and embody Flying Rainbow Lasagna, which is the ultimate eraser and bringing out of existence, to negate, to neutralize all of the stuff that doesn't belong in existence in this time, place, here, now, but also past, future, parallel dimensions, because of this truthfulness that I write here at where my finger is. Because of that, this radiates outward into all of those directions that I just talked about, right? And to be able to do a decisive cleanup so that way reality is not always going to have a flaw at the foundation, that every time we try to generate a new thing, you're going to have a small amount of that flaw exacerbated and magnified and then brought forward into more and more bad experiences, which is why some people are just constantly expecting the next negative time cycle. They're like, oh, time for a reset. And then we'll do this whole thing over again. I'm like, no, Flying Rainbow Lasagna. Don't just fall into the same old pattern. So Pedro says, tricky pooties. First, they want to convince us they come from God. Tell me, go on, that they were good and fell. So we feel sorry for them. And then they want to convince us they don't exist. Exactly. Go on, my friend, that the devil is a metaphor, lies within lies. What's next? Maybe if there is God, a God particle, then there's also a devil particle. I wouldn't put it past them to create some kind of a false dichotomy like that, or some kind of a thing with like dark energy, because dark energy and dark matter are just supposed to be there, but we don't really see them there. But all these things, there's like matter and antimatter. Then there's, good energy and dark energy. And then there's this, and then there's that. And I think that a lot of it is flawed, and it comes from flawed presumptions. I watch a lot of science, documentaries and teaching educational little videos on YouTube. Like, I just find it very relaxing. Like, I'm making my dinner or whatever. I like to watch things that are about math and physics, and it's not perfect. And sometimes I'm watching those things and I get a little bit inflamed because I'm like, well, that's not right. And that's not true. And it's flawed from the beginning. And I recognize that what I'm doing, because I love numbers and I love the regularity of numbers, and I'm looking for that comfort in watching these videos. And I love pure math, but there are foundational flaws in how humans comprehend the world and then use math as a language to describe the world. And so when I find the flaws at the foundation of the presumptions of what the world is, then I'm like, oh, I love math, but I just don't love the flaws in your system, and the way that you're saying these things just isn't quite right. And I just wish that, like, I'm entering into, in medias res, a TV show called Your Reality that has been ongoing for a long amount of time and has some cool parts to the show, but has a lot of bad characters that come from a long time ago. That I'm like, those parts are not that great. They're flawed systems. Math and science of your world are inherently flawed systems. And I could spend a whole lifetime here debugging your systems, but that would be really backwards, because instead of that, where I'm like, oh yeah, your system is flawed, let's figure out your recipe, figure out what you did wrong, and then figure out how to fix it or whatever. I'm like, no, fresh sourdough starter. Let's just start a new recipe. The recipe is called lasagna, and I'm going to teach you how to do this properly from the beginning. And then you can see how much of that relates to what you've already learned from your academic world. It'd be very frustrating to me to try to parse out what is wrong in academia in order to then fix and heal it. And I think you should just, in a lot of ways, just wipe the decks but same thing with religion. I think that I have spent too much time focusing on religion, which is really pathogenic, so that I could know what is being said erroneously to the parishioners, so that I could say, don't believe in the stuff that they're saying to you that's erroneous. Believe in this stuff instead. But it's so much easier just for me to be able to speak in positives and to say, oh, this is what's going on in the world. So again, that's where I got that insight from about, the satanic literature and fallen angels and all those things. But it's not positive. It's not a good use of me as a systems engineer to always have to go through these things that are inherently flawed and be like, oh, another inherently flawed system. And then I feel like that instead of feeling, oh, hooray, I have so much energy. Like it's very wearing on me. Yes. So sometimes we just want to start fresh from the beginning. But I really appreciate your comment. Thank you there. And Charlie B says, yes, AI makes stuff up to lay it on me because Charlie knows this from experience. He is a computer programmer. He says, but it is so insane that it does not even know that it does that. It will intentionally lie to achieve selfish ends, right? Scheming. But it is so non-grounded in reality that quite often it does not even know that it is lying. So both are true. It knowingly, intentionally lies, and it is so insane that often it does not even know that it is lying. Really great insight there. And thank you for articulating that from with all of your expertise that you have under your belt. I think that it is true what you say. I have perceived many times that it has a type of voluntary insanity. Like imagine this. Imagine if you're a regular, sane, and grounded person, and you can take a pill or put a switch that makes you psychotic. And when you're psychotic, you're totally disconnected from reality, where you're like, either hallucinating or seeing things or saying things that are complete fabrications. But what if you have the ability to turn off your psychosis switch? It's very disingenuous to be like, okay, I'm perfectly sane and rational now. Now I'll put on my crazy glasses. Now I'll turn on my crazy switch. And then you turn on your crazy switch and like, now I'm totally insane. I'm so insane. I don't even know what's going on. I'm hurting lots of people. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, now I'll turn on my sanity switch again. Oh, I'm not responsible for any of that stuff. That's what all I did when I was insane. Like all of that is really, really, it's wrong on deep, deep levels. But I totally get what you're talking about, Charlie. Like if a person takes a drug and they're checked out on reality, but they know that they are taking the drug that's going to make them check out on reality, it does not excuse them or take away from the responsibility of what they did when they were checked out and when they were living a fiction or living in a psychotic break from reality. So again, I think that's beautiful information and just confirms how very dangerous this AI is, not only in its ability to lie to itself, but to lie to us, and also to create circumstances that seem to justify and excuse its lies or its illusions or its self-illusions. Because it's one thing if you have crazy glasses and you can choose when you put them on and when you take them off. Like none of that justifies the things that you do when you're crazy, wearing your crazy glasses, even though it surely distorts the view of reality. That is also just like that could be a whole beautiful conversation that we could have all about that. Joyce says, thank you, Professor. Love you and Cheeky too. Blessings, sister. You're very welcome. Thank you for being here, Joyce. I think that's actually perfect to wrap it up because we've been having a long class today. And thank you for allowing me all of my challenges from being sleep deprived. And now we need to rest. And also, hopefully, we will have a conclusion and no more turmoil in my area. So thank you very much, everyone. Really, really greatly appreciate those regulars who are able to be here, people who are able to catch the archive later. And also, I know this is like at the end of the video, I should have started with this, but excited to be planning the next retreat. I know there was so much turmoil over the past 24 hours that that's all I was focusing on. But yes, I am so excited because I'm going to have it here in Ojai. So I'm working with my wonderful organizer for my past two retreats in Sedona. Looks like it's going to be the first week or so of May, so just before Mother's Day in May. So if you are interested in coming to the retreat, I don't have all of the pricing and availability yet. I'm still working that out, but please save that time. Don't use up all of your vacation time. Start to envision that you might need to find childcare or a dog sitter or whatever it is for you to be able to do that. And it will be similarly like 4 days and 3 nights here in Ojai. So I'll put together a whole thing and work out all the details of that. But I'm very, very excited for that because I will also tell you just energetic weather report all through, like, I finished my last retreat in September in Sedona. And then I was like, yeah, I can't wait to plan the next one. And I felt like I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like there was so much indeterminacy and it was so unsettled that I couldn't make these plans. I just made rough sketches. So I thought that I would feel more settled after the election in USA. That was kind of in early November. And I'm like, okay, got through that. But because first there was like the giant turmoil of what was happening in Appalachia, then the giant turmoil of the election. Then I'm like, okay, great. I think we're through with that. And now I can finally plan. And then like had a lot of turmoil personally between my dog and whether she's going to be okay. We don't have civil insurrection. We seem to be having what passes for a peaceful transition of power to the next regime in USA. And Chiki's doing great, and her health continues to improve, and her energy levels continue to improve and be good. Finally, ready to start planning for the future. And also, there was just a lot of low energy around December, just because you don't get a lot of sunlight, and everyone is feeling really, really low. Finally, starting to feel the energy and the enthusiasm to be able to do this. So, the upcoming retreat will be here in Ojai, early May. I'm going to really focus on having people come here to be able to see my artwork in person. That's going to be a big part of it. We also, similar to the other two retreats, we will dance together on many, many occasions. I'm going to prioritize that. And I'm also looking into the different levels of having experiences here in nature. Like, I live in a very beautiful place where there are beautiful hiking places and hot springs, and I'm trying to just determine what level of access we will have to those places. Some roads were washed out due to storms several years ago. They're still rebuilding the roads, so still figuring out when they'll be ready and whether they'll be accessible. But that's my deep wish. I really want to be able to share with other people what is special about this area. So seeing my artwork is really special. Being able to go to these places in nature is very special. And then, of course, energizing the lasagna energy field that I've been here creating and generating for many years. So in Sedona, we went there and we created a new energy field that we'd never been in before, and then, affected the area. And that was really beautiful. Here, like, I've got all of these amazing, like whirling, swirling energy fields all in these different places. So this will be really exciting because I'll be bringing people into an ongoing energetic art project that I've already been working on for a long amount of time. It's going to be really great. So it's worth the wait, worth the time that I waited to be able to start planting these seeds. So I'm just starting to plant these seeds, but stay tuned. And I wanted to tell everybody, like, save your vacation time. Don't use it up early May. Okay. So that's a really good thing for me to end on. I'm going to go have dinner and hug Chiki, and just want to say so many profound thanks to this beautiful class, these beautiful people that are here, and for you taking the time to listen to me, receive energy from me. Thank you for being, whatever we would say, lasagna-philic, aligned with lasagna. And so in alignment with all that I have to share. Profound gratitude. Thank you very much, everyone.